Chapter 976. Beasts on the verge of desperation were very dangerous, and their combat power would often skyrocket. Kenpachi on the verge of desperation was the same, and his destructive power was far beyond the so-called beasts. The ghost Yancheng's eighth swordsman was just that terrifying. His strong will far exceeded his strength. After being hit by a heaven-defying technique like the Mahabharata, he was already severely injured. Almost all the bones in his body were broken, but he was still able to miraculously stand up. This was all driven by the will to kill Dustless. "Oh, there is no deep hatred between us, why are you so obsessed with me?" Dustless said indifferently as he waved the Kusanagi sword in his hand. "With your current state you can't even move your body, let alone fight me. Stop talking, you despicable bastard, I will not let you go and I will drag you to hell even if I die." Kenpachi Gui Yenching held his body up and his eyes widened, filled with a crazy determination, and immediately used all of his strength to stab the Zanpakuto into his abdomen. Puchi Puchi, the demonic Zanpakuto collapsed and slowly disappeared like fragments, and merged into Kenpachi Gui Yenching's body, and immediately his body changed strangely. He can merge with the Zanpakuto? Even with Dustless's experience he couldn't help but be stunned at this moment. This was the first time in his life that he encountered such an incredible thing. This guy is really something. I thought he was just a normal captain-level rookie after being defeated by Zaraki Kenpachi, but I didn't expect him to have such a trump card. Now it seemed that every Kenpachi lived up to their name, and every Kenpachi had their own trump card. Oh, the already dark sky suddenly became gloomy. Looking up, an unprecedented black shadow covered the sky, and compared to him Jillian of Hueco was just a child. It was at least 100 or 200 meters tall. This is my final trump card. Once I use it I'll die completely. It's also a move that puts my life on the line. Ghost Yenching looked down at Dustless, who was as insignificant as a bug. His killing intent was awe-inspiring. Of course I can see that. No matter what happens in the end you will die. Dustless leaped into the air and looked straight at Ghost Yencheng's head. Light gathered at his feet and he mercilessly kicked at Ghost Yencheng's body. Lightspeed kick. In the dark sky that was blocked out, this extremely dense ray of light was extremely dazzling and full of destructive power. Boom boom boom. The deadly explosion spread out and targeted Ghost Yencheng's heart. A ball of flames engulfed his entire being. However, Ghost Yenching did not move at all. Clearly he was not injured at all. "You overestimate yourself." Yenching, whose entire body was engulfed in flames, sneered. His nostrils, which were larger than a person's, blew out a gust of cold wind. The raging flames were instantly extinguished and blown towards the horizon. "Now that I've surpassed the limits of the Grim Reaper, I don't feel anything from this kind of attack," Ghost Yenching said proudly. This was his final move that had been lit up by his flower of life. Its power was extraordinary. His heart that had been attacked by Dustless's lightspeed kick was actually unharmed. "Sure enough, it's different." Dustless nodded, his eyes shining. He could feel that Ghost Yencheng's spiritual pressure was now majestic, far beyond his own. "With my current level of spiritual pressure I can easily kill you. However, directly crushing you to death would be too boring. You've deliberately humiliated me time and time again. If I don't torture you I won't stop." Ghost Yenching raised his hand and hooked his huge finger at Dustless. He taunted arrogantly. You're going to go easy on me. Thank you very much." Dustless said sincerely with a smile. Immediately the chakra in his body surged. Seeing this, the chatterbox Yenching Jianba's unwilling voice rang out again. "Only Dao Breaker above number 90 can hurt me. But you're just a vice captain." At this point his unbridled laughter resounded through the sky with endless mockery and ridicule. Since the establishment of Soul Society, no vice captain had been able to use Dao Breaker above number 90. "Is that so? You saved me a lot of effort. Thank you for your reminder, Captain Ghost Yenching." Hearing Ghost Yencheng's mockery, Dustless turned a deaf ear and thanked him seriously. At the same time, Dustless's right thumb suddenly pointed at the void, the corner of his mouth raised slightly. That delicate and slender thumb contained some kind of mysterious energy. The howling cold wind in Hueco stopped instantly. Space and time seemed to have stopped forever. This huge change naturally did not escape Ghost Yencheng's eyes. "That's Looking at Dustless's strange hand gesture and sensing the majestic spiritual pressure in his body, Ghost Yancheng's old face twitched. His eyes twitched violently, filled with horror, and he shouted, "Impossible, he's just a vice captain." But Dustless, with his eyes closed, ignored these words. Ancient, cryptic, and incomprehensible words came out of his mouth skillfully, faintly revealing the turbid emblem, the untamed and arrogant talent. The clay puppet that keeps harming itself, combined with rebound extending to the ground, know your own powerlessness. After the chant was over, the world was dead silent and solemn. Wuxian opened his eyes and looked at Yanqing Jianba, who was in a daze and despondent, with a look of pity on his face. He could clearly see the distortion in the sky. The sky was filled with black light pouring down. Dao Breaker number 90, Black Coffin. Chapter 977. Ghost Yancheng's eyes widened. After a moment of silence, he opened his mouth, but he suddenly realized that something was wrong. He swallowed the words that were about to reach his ears. If he asked Dustless to stop attacking immediately, he would only be humiliating himself. Moreover, Ghost Yanqing could not bring himself to do that, so he could only give it his all. Just as he was pondering, the demonic black flash swallowed Ghost Yancheng's sword 8. A giant black coffin appeared out of thin air on the ground of Hueco Mundo. There were many unruly crosses in it, mysterious and ancient. Horrifying sounds could be heard coming from inside. The sound of his body being chopped up like vegetables was endless. He was terrified and depressed, as if he had come to hell. The surrounding great voids who heard the news and came over, all turned and ran when they heard this soul-piercing scream. "Bastard, I won't let you go. When I come out, I'll tear you to pieces and grind your bones to dust." From the inside of the coffin came a roar filled with hatred, as well as a deep and vile killing intent. Not only did the miserable howls not stop because of the appearance of the black coffin, but because of Dustless's cold treatment, it caused Ghost Yanqing to hate him even more. Dustless remained calm. There were countless people who hated him. It did not matter if there was one more or one less. It did not matter. After all, Ghost Yanqing would be separated by life and death soon. There was no need to argue with someone who was about to die. Crack, crack, crack. Suddenly, a violent wave of spiritual pressure surged out of the black coffin. Then a giant fist smashed the black coffin into pieces. Ghost Yancheng's giant body was exposed. It was a horrible sight. You can even survive like this. Not only are you strong, but you can also take a beating. As expected of Sword 8. Dustless gave Ghost Yanqing a thumbs up with an expression of admiration. Then his expression changed faster than flipping a book. He spat out cold air, and the dense murderous intent that overflowed could even make people feel stuffy and hallucinate. How many more attacks can you take in this state? As soon as he finished speaking, the spiritual pressure in his body that had temporarily stopped surged. Waves of destructive ripples were about to burst out, and the invisible impact flattened the protruding hills around him. At least I won't die before I kill you." Ghost Yancheng's fierce-looking face was embellished with murderous intent, and his ghastly eyes emitted a dim light as if he was about to devour someone. Sensing Dustless's slight spiritual pressure, his eyes were filled with contempt and disdain. This spiritual pressure was of a completely different dimension. "Your level of spiritual pressure is completely incomparable to mine." Noticing the Dustless spiritual pressure, Ghost Yanqing sneered. The sarcasm in his tone was undisguised, as if he was talking to a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. "Is that so? Then why do you look like this?" Dustless asked in return. Ghost Yancheng's saber wounds were hideous and frightening. Even his white bones as well as his internal organs were exposed to the air. And the instigator was Dustless, a person whose spiritual pressure was not worth mentioning. "You have a sharp tongue." Hearing this, Ghost Yancheng's old face darkened, and then a ghastly light shot out from his tiger-like eyes. "It is indeed beyond my imagination that you can use Black Coffin. However, with the previous lesson I have now strengthened my body to the limit. Even if you use Black Coffin again, it will be useless," Ghost Yanqing said solemnly. He raised his arrogant head and his arrogant laughter resounded through the sky. "If you want to hurt me with just the path of ghost, you have to use at least Hado number 96. One-blade cremation. That is a forbidden art that uses burning the body as a medium," Dustless said to himself. He had seen and remembered the one-blade cremation used by Rokush boxer Nishi. His power was shockingly strong. But, thank you for your reminder this time. You are really a qualified strategist, always giving me advice when I have a headache. Captain Ghost Yanqing, next year at this time, I will definitely go to your grave to burn incense and pay my respects to you. Dustless chuckled. His tone was exceptionally high and full of gratitude. His whole body was filled with blazing spiritual pressure, almost exactly the same as Rokush Boxer Nishi's. Are you kidding me? How can you know a forbidden art like one-blade cremation? You have only been a death god for half a year. How can you know such a forbidden art? Saber 8 Ghost Yanqing exclaimed in shock, his eyeballs almost falling out of their sockets. Hearing that, Wuqian remained unmoved. With a gentle smile on his face, he said calmly, since you said that cremation with one saber can defeat you, let's do as you say. The chakra condensed in his body was extremely hot. Its power and range were even greater than Rokush Boxer Nishi's. Path of Hado number 96. One-blade cremation. The ground was instantly dyed a fiery red, refracting a dangerous halo. Then with a bang, a huge crimson blade instantly swallowed Ghost Yanqing's Kenpachi. Bang bang bang. Before he could even scream, Ghost Yanqing's soul was destroyed. He was burned to ashes with a single slash, and a figure fell from the sky. It was Ghost Yanqing's charred body, and he could not be more dead. The insides of his body had been hollowed out. Boom boom boom. After a long while the blade exploded, producing a blazing storm. Dustless, who was caught off guard, was also forced to retreat. Even if he was thousands of meters away from the center, he could still feel the unparalleled impact. This forbidden art is really strong. Seeing such exaggerated destruction, Dustless nodded with satisfaction. He immediately looked at his charred left arm and couldn't help but shake his head. If he didn't have the body of the 10-tailed beast, he wouldn't have dared to use such a trick. It was equivalent to sacrificing 800 to kill 1,000 enemies. This is. Just as Dustless was about to clean up Ghost Yanqing and return to Soul Society with Rokush Boxer Nishi's body to take credit, a few strange spiritual pressures came. They were not great void or death gods, but they were very powerful. Chapter 978. Hearing this, Dustless opened his mouth so wide that it could fit a fist. His face was blank. I thought it was strange at first, but I didn't expect Jugram to be the mastermind. Dustless's eyes widened in shock, but his heart was as calm as water. The information about the masquerade army was top secret, and Urahara Kisuk was tight-lipped. Only he and a few people from the 4th campus knew about it. Aizen Susuke didn't know at all. Jugram somehow passed this top-secret information to Aizen's ears, including the fact that they could successfully turn into nothingness. Aizen, who couldn't wait to find the source, controlled Central Room 46 behind the scenes and ordered Soul Society to attack the masquerade army. Thousands of doubts were cleared, and a figure suddenly appeared in Dustless's mind. He had long black hair and a beard, a deep and fierce face, red eyes, and 3 silver medals on his collar. He was a man in a crimson cloak. Yawach hasn't woken up yet. All of this was Jugram's order. With great interest, Dustless reorganized his words and was about to ask about Yawach. After all, his origin, strength, and identity were all unsolved mysteries. He needed to ask in detail. Your Majesty, the Yawach you mentioned, the words stopped abruptly. Dustless didn't feel a cold gaze on him. It was very fierce. He turned his head and saw Busby looking down at him with a cold expression. There was a wisp of flame at the tip of his thumb, and it was locked onto Dustless's head. Busby was given the ability to burn by Yawach, so he could flexibly control the flame. Busby is quite vigilant. I have to rely on other methods. Seeing this, Dustless suddenly changed his mind. He planned to defeat the two and extract their memories. Actually, it's quite sad for you, Quincy. Dustless suddenly sighed in pity. Almost all of the surviving Quincy had drunk Yawach's blood. When the farewell was launched in the future, they would all be the nourishment for Yawach to become stronger. Glancing at Baseby and Candace, Dustless suddenly changed his face and said coldly, since you two have answered so many of my questions, I'll let you die beautifully. I'll leave your corpses intact. As soon as he said that, Busby snorted. The Grim Reaper relies on spiritual pressure to fight. You think you can kill us with your spiritual pressure? You're not scared silly by Candace, are you? Bartz was very disdainful, then he sneered and said, disappear. Bang. The flaming bullet condensed by his thumb shot out and easily pierced through Dustless's head, unable to withstand a single blow. Busby curled his mouth in disdain when he saw this. He turned around and left with a frivolous expression. His back appeared exceptionally free and easy. What's wrong with this guy? Watch out for Busby. As soon as he took 2 steps forward, Candace's ear-piercing voice came with astonishment and shock. Hearing this, Busby retracted his foot and turned around in confusion. He's just an ant that's spouting nonsense and only knows how to clamor. What's so good about him? Bang. The first thing he saw when he turned his head was a golden calf. Busby didn't even see the sneak attacker's figure clearly before he was sent flying by the explosive little foot. Boom. 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 Caught off guard, Busby was instantly heavily injured and spat out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't resist the powerful force and could only go with the flow and resign himself to fate. He looked at his chest in disbelief. The skin there was permanently necrotic and there were also sunken footprints. Bastard, you dare to lie to me? Candace flew into a rage out of humiliation. High-density lightning flashed all over her body, and she glared at the indifferent Dustless. This is outrageous. How dare you trick me? And you even acted so well. Thinking of how she foolishly revealed the secret of Quincy to Dustless, Candace flew into a rage. Her delicate body trembled, and the 2 majestic peaks in front of her chest swayed back and forth, dazzling the eyes. She swallowed her saliva. I do need to thank you, Dustless said sincerely. If it weren't for Candace telling him everything, he would still be in the dark. But now we're even. With your posture full of flaws, I can kill you dozens of times. His calm tone was like an ancient well as he recounted a trivial matter. You mean, you're very fast? Candace sneered, and a large number of spiritual particles condensed under her feet in an instant. Dustless didn't answer but just looked at her indifferently. Obviously that was what he meant. Arrogant, Philian kick. Candace suddenly disappeared from his sight, and her breath disappeared without a trace. Dustless's pupils dilated as he looked for traces of Candace. Dustless looked around for a long time, but still failed to find any trace of Candace. He shook his head and gave up. Boy, what do you mean? After a while, a puzzled voice came from behind. Dustless was slightly startled and immediately turned his head. Candace was very close, only a thumb's length away from Dustless's face. Dustless could smell her elegant body fragrance with a light sniff. Candace could have launched a sneak attack, but her deep doubts made her hold back the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There was no other reason than Dustless's reaction was too unusual. She didn't hide her breath, and even a beginner death god could detect her presence. However, Dustless looked like he didn't know anything. It was hard to imagine that he could severely injure Dustless just now. There was a world of difference between his reaction before and after. Now Dustless was like a rookie. There's nothing strange about it. Dustless's clear eyes saw through Candace's thoughts. He said indifferently, because there's no need. Any of your attacks are useless. No matter what kind of tricks you use, they won't work on me. I don't need to feel your trace. Just come at me if you can. I'm standing right here. Anyway, you can't hit me. This truth was like a thorn that stabbed Candace's self-esteem. I'm standing right here. Anyway, you can't hit me. How arrogant. He didn't take her and Dustless seriously at all. Chapter 979. Candace was furious and rubbed her eyes. Dustless was still bowing and groveling just a moment ago, but in the blink of an eye he had become so arrogant. She couldn't get used to the difference between before and after. If you're not going to do it, I'm going to. A cold voice rang in her ears. Then Dustless's body turned tangible and intangible, and he disappeared without a trace. So fast. Seeing this, Candace was greatly alarmed. She could see a straight beam of light shooting towards Busby's direction. Candace's ability was thunder. Not only did she have the speed of lightning, but she also had the power of lightning. Dustless had instead aroused her competitive spirit. Pop pop pa. Dazzling lightning jumped all over her body, and she turned into a silver light that rushed toward Dustless. Holy Annihilation Arrow. The lightning pierced through Dustless, but its effect was minimal. Couldn't hurt Dustless at all. What made Candace angry was that Dustless didn't even look at her from the beginning to the end. He completely ignored her as if she was a nobody. You bastard, I'll kill you. Busby's face twisted ferociously. A huge blazing flame condensed on his finger, Burning finger too. Bang. The flame dragon was extremely ferocious. It instantly shattered Dustless. Different from before, the burning finger this time was obviously several times stronger. When the flame destroyed Dustless, it also produced an extremely strong flame explosion that dissipated all the photons on Dustless's body. The fingernail-sized flame was extremely powerful. The tyrannical destruction it produced was definitely not inferior to Dao Breaker number 90. Strange. What's wrong with this group of Quinites? The soaring flame was extremely hot. The flame explosion revolved around Dustless's body, but it was obviously different from the elemental transformation just now. His whole body turned intangible. Dustless didn't hesitate to use divine might. The extraordinary flame could even burn photons. Something doesn't seem right. It seems like there are quite a few people in this world who can hit my elemental form. Could it be that my elemental form also changed when I changed into my soul state? Dustless muttered to himself, completely ignoring the flames around him. First there was Yanqing Kenpachi and then there was Busby. It was too much of a coincidence. Even Candace had more or less played a role, but it was not as effective as Busby's. Ghost Yancheng's Kenpachi can touch elementization because of Zanpakuto's ability. But these two quinces don't understand hockey or elementization doesn't work on quinces. Dustless tried to figure it out, but he couldn't figure it out for a long time. Soon after, he felt relieved. Even if his elemental transformation really failed, it still couldn't make up for the gap between them. Moreover, he wasn't someone who relied on elemental transformation, not to mention he still had God's might. You're dead for sure. Waving his hand, Bazabi shook off the dust on his body and looked at his bumpy chest. His eyes were filled with gloominess. Brat, you died quickly. Otherwise, what will happen? A gust of cold air blew by his ear and Bazabi was shocked. He turned his head reflexively and saw that Dustless was unscathed, and he was holding a golden greatsword in his hand. Bazabi's expression turned serious as he sensed the murderous intent boiling all over Dustless's body. His right foot suddenly stomped on the ground and his unique domain spread out. Armor shell calming armor. A circular protective shield with lines spread out, forming an absolute domain. Anyone who tried to get close to Bazabi would be eroded. What's the use of this thing? With contempt in his eyes, Dustless grabbed the line defense in front of him with one hand. Its effect was similar to Shinra Tensei. Idiot, you dare to grab the armor shell calming armor with your hand? This is completely different from ordinary armor shell calming armor. Not only can it defend against the enemy, but it can also erode the enemy. Bazabi sneered in his heart. He was speechless at Dustless's ignorance and stupidity. Pfft. A crisp sound was heard and Bazabi was stunned. He looked at Dustless and his mocking smile stopped. Looking at Dustless, who had invaded the armor shell calming armor, unscathed, Bazabi's eyes became extremely dim as if his soul had been sucked away. His hand. How did he do that? Candace looked at Dustless's big black hand and said in disbelief. That big hand that flashed with a deep black edge completely ignored the existence of the armor shell calming armor, and easily tore it apart. You two have always been the first to attack. This time it's time for someone else to attack. A cold glint appeared in his hawk-like eyes. Bazabi and Candace, who were being stared at, felt as if their souls were trembling. They both felt as if there was a blade on their backs. They pointed at the void and gathered all the spiritual pressure in their bodies. Dao Breaker 9. They thought that they would be greeted with the ultimate attack of 5 thunders, but who would have thought that Dustless's fierce attack would suddenly stop? He instantly settled the matter and relaxed his raised finger. After looking at Dustless seriously for a while, Bazabi's tense nerves relaxed. He sneered in a strange manner and said, "You're just putting on an act. You want to fight us without your spiritual pressure?" Candace also had a light smile on her face as she looked at Dustless mockingly. Indeed. I don't have much spiritual pressure left. Although chakra has unlimited spiritual pressure, it's far from enough. I've used more than 90% of my spiritual pressure in the previous battles. Dustless couldn't deny it and muttered to himself. Kid, you're going to be in big trouble this time, Candace said with a smile. Candace beamed with exultation. She rolled up her sleeves, intending to teach Wuxia a lesson with an arrogant face. I'm going to be in big trouble, but I'm not the one who needs to worry. Dustless nodded in agreement. Another mysterious energy surged in his body. You're the ones who are going to be in big trouble. I've only been a Shinigami trainee for more than half a year. I don't even have a Zanpakuto yet. In fact, I'm better at chakra. Shinigami was Dustless's secondary profession. Ninja was his main profession. Compared to the former, Dustless was better at the latter. Chapter 980. Hearing this, the two of them looked at each other. Their first reaction was to think that this was nonsense. Bring it on. Noticing that Dustless's spiritual pressure had decreased, Busby was full of confidence. He hooked his finger at Dustless provocatively. Since you want to die so much, I'll grant you your wish. His deep pupils changed rapidly. The chakra in Dustless's body surged. Compared to the weak spiritual pressure, it was on a completely different level. It was vast and boundless. What a terrifying gaze. What kind of eyes are those? Busby's proud expression froze and became slightly gloomy. Dustless's eyes turned into blood-red pentagrams. Being stared at, Busby trembled uncontrollably. His hair stood on end and cold sweat poured down. Bastard, I'm actually afraid of a death god without spiritual pressure. As if he had been humiliated, Busby cursed in his heart. The murderous intent in his eyes deepened. His body was like a black hole that gathered a large amount of spiritual droplets. It was boundless. The death god needed time to accumulate spiritual pressure, while the void needed to devour. The annihilator only needed to collect the spiritual droplets in the air. It went without saying who had the advantage. The spiritual droplets had reached a bottleneck. Busby's back was burning with flames like a god of fire. He pointed his finger at Dustless and was about to launch his strongest attack to destroy Dustless. Suddenly, a heart-wrenching pain came from his right hand that he was proud of. He saw a strange black flame burning on it. Heavenly reflection. As Dustless's voice fell, the originally weak flame became 100 times bigger and extended rapidly, trying to pull Busby into the flame. It hurts. Pain appeared on Busby's face. He even fell to the ground and rolled because of the excessive pain. He tried everything to extinguish the flame, but the effect was minimal. Even the things that touched the black flame were instantly ignited. Don't touch Busby. I'll help you. Hearing Busby's scream, Candace's gem-like green pupils flashed with pity. Although she was cruel to her enemies, they were still on the same side. The white and tender lotus arms condensed electric light. Just as she was about to reach out to help Busby, Dustless's indifferent voice sounded. No one can extinguish Amaterasu. Other than me, anyone who touches it will be affected. Dustless's words stopped Candace in her tracks. He said coldly, you have to pay the price for everything you do. After attacking me, you want to leave unscathed? There's nothing so cheap in this world. As long as I kill you, this black flame will extinguish itself. However, Candace didn't appreciate his kindness. Her murderous aura surged. Her hands absorbed a large amount of high-density spirit particles, and a shining longbow appeared in her hands. Several sharp arrows were shot out of the bowstring towards Dustless. A deathbed struggle. Dustless raised his eyebrows and immediately reacted. He gathered a large amount of light with one hand and glanced at the incoming arrow, then threw it out. Yasukani no Magatama. There were tens of thousands of flashing arrows, far more than the transparent ones. Bang bang bang. Under the intensive number of attacks, Candace's spirit bow collapsed in an instant, and it was difficult to splash ripples and attract Dustless's attention. Whoosh. Although her first attack failed, Candace didn't give up. Instead, she launched an even fiercer attack. Lightning crackled in her jade-like hands, and the light was so dazzling that one couldn't look at it directly. It could easily burn one's eyes. Thunder explosion. The light sword, which was completely compressed by lightning, swooped down, leaving an afterimage in the void. It was about to shoot out of Dustless's eyebrows when another change occurred. Boom. The big black hand suddenly grabbed it and subdued it. How long are you going to play with this kind of child's play? The big hand covered with armament hockey grabbed the thunder and immediately clenched into a fist, and like a mirror, it shattered and turned into thousands of fireflies. You bastard. Seeing this, Candace didn't despair. Instead, Wu Chen's contempt aroused her competitive spirit. She turned into a bolt of lightning and dashed out. The movement trajectory was quite similar to that of Enel. Pop pop pa. The abnormality in the sky attracted Dustless's attention. The unscrupulous lightning danced freely in the sky. It was very arrogant and the density was high and the scope was large. Whoosh! A black shadow swept up out of thin air, and the thunder seemed to have met a loved one, and all of them condensed in the hands of this person. The ability to control lightning is very rare. Dustless commented, his face unchanged. Humph. Seeing this, Candace's beautiful eyes spat fire. This was one of her strongest moves, but Dustless was so calm. It was obvious that he was half-hearted. She clenched her slender fingers, and the arrogant lightning immediately condensed in her palm. She said hatefully, "Go to hell." Electrocution. The huge thunder blade composed entirely of lightning fell, and Candace's anger slashed towards Dustless, and Hueco Mundo, which was born in the dark environment, was as bright as day. Turning thunder into a blade to attack compared with before, the power has increased by more than a little. Dustless was about to be dismembered, but he was unmoved. He looked at Candace with a faint sympathy in his eyes. There was no doubt that this was a very powerful ability, but Yoacha's subordinates were not short of monsters. Whether it was the head of the knights, Jugram, or Yoacha's personal guards, their abilities were unheard of. People like Candace were destined to be abandoned in the end. Looking up at Candace in the void and the falling thunder blade, Dustless's expression gradually became cold and chakra full of vitality danced in his body. Then red logs fell from the sky. There were so many of them that they couldn't be seen clearly. They only knew that there were a lot of them. Spiritual Method, Bright God Gate. Chapter 981. The dark sky attracted everyone's attention. Busby looked up at the sky, staring at the mahogany in the sky. He clenched his fists, and his eyes finally fell on his arm that was being baked by the black fire. His hesitation was replaced by determination. Poochie! A cold light flashed and Busby cut off his arm without hesitation. He glared at Dustless fiercely and disappeared. Bastard, that kid didn't abandon me and run away, did he? Candace, who had been paying attention to Busby's movements, said angrily. Ka. The redwood fell extremely fast. To some extent, lightning restrained the wood attribute, but the immortal technique, Bright God Gate, was not an ordinary technique. It was so powerful that it could temporarily suppress the jubi. Ka. With a series of crisp sounds, the blade that was completely composed of lightning was crushed by the bright deity gate's powerful suppression before it even had the chance to fall. The most shocking thing was that this red divine wood could absorb spiritual energy and swallow the remaining lightning blade until it turned into nothingness. Damn, where did this kid come from? Candace's pretty face collapsed and she couldn't help but curse. Looking down at Dustless, who was motionless on the ground, a sense of frustration rose in her heart. She couldn't defeat him even after using all her skills. After pondering for a while, her body flashed with lightning and gradually showed signs of dissipating. She chose to avoid him for the time being. The two sides were not in the same dimension at all. If I were to let you leave after casually attacking others, wouldn't that be too much of a loss for me? The golden light condensed in front of Candace and Dustless blocked her way. The Wandless Empire was a mystery and it was impossible for them to confess. In this case he could only use Rinnegan to forcibly extract her memory. A ripple appeared in the void and it trembled slightly. Then Dustless disappeared without a trace. Candace didn't have time to be surprised. She suddenly felt a pair of big warm hands grabbing her. She looked carefully and a trace of jealousy flashed in her eyes. The slender fingers and delicate skin were more delicate than Candace, who usually paid attention to skin care. Especially it was a pair of men's hands. Let me go. Candace struggled hard, but her right arm was restrained by Dustless. At the same time she warned loudly, "Come so close to me, you're courting death." Pa. Like a lightning man, his limbs and bones were covered in lightning. All of them swept towards Dustless's hand that was grabbing her, trying to use this method to force Dustless back. Naive. Seeing this, Dustless remained unmoved, his eyes condensed and he whispered, "Armament hockey hardening." The black brilliance swept out, and in the blink of an eye, Wuchan's entire body was filled with black skin. It was sparkling and at the same time it was also exceptionally hard. Could play the role of attacking and defending at the same time. Ka. Dustless didn't stop it, allowing the lightning to corrode his body. Crackling sounds could be heard as it attempted to destroy Dustless. Due to the lightning being too powerful, even Dustless's hair was dyed silver. How is this possible? Even lightning is immune? Candace swallowed her saliva in shock. Dustless's entire body was filled with lightning, but his expression remained the same, and his pupils remained unchanged. He wasn't affected at all. Even if there was, it could be ignored. The gap is too big. Don't worry, I'm not interested in you. That Yawatch is my target. Dustless gave Candace a reassuring look, indicating that there was no need to struggle. He said confidently, although to a certain extent using Rinnegan to extract memories will turn those who are attacked into idiots in most cases. But my technique is guaranteed, so you can rest assured. After using Rinnegan for so many years, Dustless had already reached the realm of perfection. Extract memories? What do you want to do to His Majesty? Candace's face was filled with fear and she instinctively struggled. I didn't expect you to be so loyal to Yawatch. His eyes flashed with surprise. He didn't expect this tall and strong girl to be so loyal to Yawatch. She didn't worry about his safety but the old monster Yawatch. What a pity. Dustless smacked his lips. He felt that it was quite unfair for her. Whether you listen to me or not, remember Yawatch is not a good thing. You, including the members of your Star Knights, are all his pawns. After making the best use of everything, you will be obliterated. Dustless said seriously. Immediately, regardless of how Candace reacted, he directly reached out and grabbed her head. He was about to use the ability of Rinnegan to extract her memories when a disruptor appeared out of nowhere. Burning Finger 3. The edge of the flame bullet was unstoppable, and in the blink of an eye, it was close to Dustless and Candace. You want to hurt me with this kind of thing? You silly boy with a coxcomb on your head, are you out of your mind? Stupid. Dustless sneered, his face full of disdain and casual. His arm covered with armament hockey went straight to the vulnerable flame. However, an unexpected scene suddenly happened. The moment the flame touched Dustless's palm, it was given life, bypassed the palm at a very tricky angle and rushed toward Candace, once again restoring its destructive edge. Poochie. The girl touched the wound on her abdomen in disbelief and her face was dull. Looking for the source, it was Busby with a cold and emotionless face. This kid changed his face faster than flipping a book. Just now we were teammates fighting together, but now he's ruthless. In order not to let me extract her memories, he really killed her. Because he was very close, Dustless could clearly see that Candace's internal organs were instantly burned and seriously injured. I like to see people killing each other, but this is also good. After witnessing the coldness of the Star Knights, I might as well use her to retaliate against that old thing ya hee. Dustless's gaze fell on Candace, whose face was full of despair, and a crafty smile involuntarily appeared on his face. Chapter 982. The reason why Busby killed Candace was very simple. He didn't want to leave anyone alive. This was because too many things were involved. If some secrets were exposed, it would shake the world greatly. The Wandless Empire, which had temporarily calmed down, would also suffer a destructive blow. Bah, Busby, you bastard. I will kill you. Candace's gem-like eyes flickered with the light of a beast as she roared hysterically. You are such a loyal friend, Jabok. You should be happy that you are willing to die for him. You should be thanking me for helping you. Busby said as if nothing had happened, as if he had done something insignificant. Aren't you afraid that Jugram will kill you for killing a member of the Sterncross Knights so casually? Dustless asked in confusion. Although he knew that Busby and Jugram had a good relationship, it was suspicious that he had overstepped his authority to kill a member of the Sterncross Knights so casually. After all, the leader of this group was Jabok. Even if he was in a deep sleep and had given Jugram the ruler's mask, it would be Jugram who would kill his subordinates, not Busby. That's right. If you kill me, Jugram won't let you go either. Enduring the burning pain, Candace stood on the same side as Dustless and said hatefully, I know that you have a good relationship with Jugram, but according to his nature, you will still be executed by Jugram when you return to the Wandless Empire. This was not a preamble. Everyone knew about Jugram's coldness. Idiot. Hearing this, Busby's face was full of mockery. He said in a shocking manner, Since you are about to go to hell, I don't mind telling you that the person who ordered your execution is Hugo Jugram. Busby said with pity, Hugo Grum once told me that if any of us failed, I should kill him as a show of loyalty to Jabok. After a moment of silence, the confusion in Dustless' eyes disappeared. Judging from Jugram's personality, he was indeed that kind of person. Sometimes his personality was quite similar to Yawach's. Dustless still remembered that when Yawach revived and invaded Soul Society, Jugram had personally executed many members of the Stern Ritter. Just like what he said. His remaining arm pointed at Dustless as he said indifferently, "You are just pawns being used. Once you lose your value, you will be abandoned." These merciless words were like a thorn that pierced deeply into Candace's heart. Her firm belief collapsed instantly. She stared at Busby with a murderous look, trembling all over. His respect for Yawach and Jugram had also turned into hatred. He wished he could tear them into pieces and burn their bones to ashes to vent the hatred in his heart. That's for the best. Dustless suddenly smiled strangely. Then he looked at the arrogant Busby with a playful look and said sarcastically, "Don't be so arrogant. You are no exception. You are also pawns being used by Yawach." Hearing this, Busby's face turned gloomy. He did not need Dustless to explain. He knew what was going on. "Game is over. Please go to hell." A golden flash whizzed over. It was so bright that he could not open his eyes. So fast. Even so, in a flash, Busby still saw Dustless's face. Whoosh. Busby had also learned a series of lessons from before. He was no longer as arrogant as before. He sensibly distanced himself from Dustless. Still want to run? How boring. Shaking his head, Dustless chased after Busby again. "Idiot, you don't even know that you have been tricked. Did you think that I went to find reinforcements? How naive." Seeing Dustless rushing over, Busby's eyes shone. Cunning intent surged in the depths of his eyes. All the data on his body started to increase without limit. A quincy pentagram appeared above his head, and a pair of long stick-shaped wings appeared on his back. This shocking change naturally attracted Dustless's attention. Busby's spiritual pressure, speed, strength, and even height increased strangely. "That's Quincy's perfect holy body," Candace shouted with all her strength. "I know." Glancing indifferently at Candace, who was bleeding non-stop, Dustless really didn't know where he got his strength from. He reckoned that the reason he could hold on until now was because he wanted to see Busby get beaten up by Dustless to vent his anger. Scorching hell. His 5 fingers emitted extreme heat at the same time, forming a spiral shape and swallowing Dustless. Even the void along the way was scorched to the point of distortion due to its great power. "Farewell," Busby said coldly. He was full of confidence. This was his strongest move. "You are right. It is indeed farewell." There was a ripple in the void. Then a huge spiral-shaped sword appeared and fell into Wu Chen's hand. This strange sword was emitting a strange red light. It was deciphering the basic structure of this world, as if it was making the final preparations to destroy this planet. "It is a blessing of 3 lifetimes to be able to die under good separation sword. This special treatment is given to you because you are my spy. You should be grateful to me," Dustless said with an expression as if this was how it should be, completely ignoring the bulging veins on Busby's forehead. In his eyes, Busby was a dead man. There was no need to argue with a dead man. Whoosh. Staring at the fire dragon that wanted to devour him, Dustless moved with the momentum. He swept out his good separation sword, and a huge red light swept out from the tip of the good separation sword. The incomparably arrogant 5 flames instantly dissipated into thin air. After shattering them, they flew straight towards the dumbfounded Busby. Chapter 983. Dustless had made up his mind to kill Busby, so there was no way he would go easy on him. The sword energy was extremely fast, and it was already too late when Busby noticed it. Outer blood calming armor. Busby resisted with all his might under the shadow of death that he had never experienced before. He counterattacked with all his might, and a pattern domain that was dozens of times larger than the previous one spread out. Crack. The defense that he had high hopes for collapsed instantly. The good parting sword was unstoppable, and it easily tore through the defense of the outer blood calming armor. "Are you kidding me? It's that easy." Busby's eyes widened as he faced the incoming red light. His soul trembled and he felt a chill all over his body. The sharpness of this attack was enough to shatter the entire world. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Without thinking, Busby ran away at full speed, even forgetting the humiliation that Dustless had brought him. Where there was life, there was hope. It wouldn't be too late to take revenge on Dustless in the future. This Grim Reaper who was wearing an ordinary Grim Reaper outfit was too strong. Run slowly. It's useless even if you run to the ends of the earth. Glancing at Busby who was running wildly, Dustless slowly landed on the ground. He lifted his head to see the red light following Busby. It seemed to have an automatic navigation system. It didn't want to let him go and even shortened the distance between them. Candace, who felt the ground tremble slightly, tried to open her eyes, revealing her gem-like pupils. She struggled to move her gaze, and just as she was about to see who it was, she heard a voice that sounded a little disdainful. It must be painful to be killed by a trusted companion, right? Dustless walked over and rubbed salt on her wounds. Her internal organs were already destroyed, and even a god couldn't save her. Are you here to mock me? Even though she was on the verge of death, the hot-tempered Candace still couldn't help but talk back. Soon after, she angrily roared, "If there is an afterlife, I will definitely kill that bastard Busby and Jugram, and tear you Habak into pieces." She had been loyal to Wanless Empire for hundreds of years, and in the end she was abandoned and killed by her own people. How could she not be angry? How about we make a deal? After a moment of silence, Dustless said something shocking. His calm tone was extremely serious and he obviously wasn't joking. "I can help you recover to your original state. However, as a condition you have to provide me with information on Wandenrake and Habak. Jugram is even more dangerous than Susuke Aizen." "Let me recover? Do you think you're Yawach?" After being stunned for a moment, Candace took it as a joke and said, "Even Yawach, who prides himself as a god, can't come back to life after being killed, let alone you." He instinctively thought that this was a lie. Pucci. As the cloth was torn apart, Candace suddenly felt that her body was extremely cold. She reflexively looked at Dustless. "Bastard, I'm going to kill you. How dare you tear my clothes?" Candace was ashamed and angry at the same time. Her clothes were torn apart by Dustless, and her pair of snow-white huge breasts were exposed to the air. She felt cold all over. "Yawach can't do it, but that doesn't mean I can't. Compared to me, his so-called god is just a mortal." Dustless stared at Candace's huge breasts without any scruples. His fingertips flashed and he said, "How about it? Agree to my condition and I'll bring you back to life immediately. If you refuse, I'll give you complete freedom." Boom boom boom. At the same time, a dull explosion shook Hueco Mundo, and a fiery red aftershock rushed out. The sword energy of the good separation sword finally destroyed the escaping Baseby, just as Dustless expected. The Ryatsu disappeared without a trace. Think about Yawach's coldness, think about Baseby's ruthlessness, think about Jugram's heartlessness, think about... Let them live freely in this world safe and sound. Are you willing? Dustless's eyes glowed red as he tempted her. "Baseby? Didn't you just kill him?" The sudden words made Dustless feel awkward, but his face was as thick as a city wall. He just smiled and continued to persuade her. "In short, I can bring you back to life, but the condition is that you tell me everything about Wandenrake, your future activities, future plans, and of course information about Yawach." This kind of small injury would kill anyone else, but in Dustless's eyes, it was just a small matter. Not to mention some heaven-defying ninjutsu. After he awakened the glint-glint fruit, he could regenerate broken limbs, and it wouldn't be difficult for him to remodel someone's internal organs. "No problem, if you fail I'll take it that you've tricked me again." Clenching her fists, Candace thought of Yawach and Jugram and said resolutely. She couldn't die like this and she still had to take revenge on Wandenrake. "As you wish." Hearing this, Dustless breathed a sigh of relief and put his right hand on Candace's chest. The warm and soft touch made Dustless excited, and he couldn't help but sneak a few touches. "You better watch yourself." Candace's delicate face was red and she warned him while gnashing her teeth. "That's necessary before the treatment. I need to detect the degree of damage to your body before I can treat it properly." Dustless's face twitched and he casually found an excuse. How is this possible? You can really do it." Candace was about to scold Dustless, but her burned chest suddenly became warm and comfortable, and the burned and necrotic skin healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. "I've said it before, compared to me Yawach turned from a god to a mortal." Dustless smiled confidently and his right arm bloomed with a dazzling golden light, full of vitality, and looked very sacred, repairing and recreating brand new internal organs. The heart that had originally disappeared slowly reappeared, and it was beating with a thump thump thump. Chapter 984. Miracles continued to happen. In just a few minutes, Candace, who was half a step away from the gates of hell, was pulled back by Dustless. She sat there in a daze. Her breasts were exposed to the air, but they were covered by a random piece of cloth. Candace wanted to rob Dustless of his clothes, but he refused with the ridiculous reason that he was afraid of the cold. This body... Wuqian's eyes were sparkling and shifty. Out of the corner of his eyes, Wuqian could not take his eyes off Candace. Candace, who was wearing revealing clothes, was pulling his mind. When did I fall so low? Dustless couldn't help but sigh as he thought of himself. When a person was strong enough, his desires would also be stronger. Now that you've been resurrected, tell me about Yawach's deeds in exchange. Dustless shook his head and threw away the dirty thoughts in his mind. In Soul Society, Yawach was a forbidden existence. All information about him had been erased. No problem, but what I know is just bits and pieces. Candace was very embarrassed. Although Dustless had resurrected her, he could only provide her with some insignificant and harmless information. His Majesty. Oh no, that bastard. Candace was furious when she thought of Yawach. Although it was Busby who killed her, she could see clearly what kind of people Yawach and Jugram were. Yawach is currently in a deep slumber. No one in the Starcross Knights knows where his true body is. Judging from his character, even Jugram, his trusted aide, might not know. Candace shrugged and said helplessly. Jugram was now equivalent to the second king of Wanless Empire. Even he didn't know where Yawach's true body was, let alone Candace, whose role was equivalent to cannon fodder. I've heard that Jugram has been following Yawach since 1,000 years ago. At that time his position was very high and he was the second most important person in Wanless Empire. And for some reason when Yawach was in a deep sleep he would exchange power with Jugram. Candace told him everything she knew. He hated Yawach to the core. That's strange. If I remember correctly, Jugram's ability is balance. Why would Yolanda need balance? Dustless asked curiously. He was very curious about this mysterious figure, Yawach. This time it was Candace's turn to be surprised. She looked at Dustless in disbelief. Even the people of Wanless Empire might not know what Jugram's ability was, but a Grim Reaper like Dustless knew about it. How could Candace not be surprised? Forget it, it's none of my business. After casually tidying up her clothes, Candace turned around and was about to leave. Hey. I didn't give you permission to leave. Who allowed you to leave? Dustless frowned and said unhappily. Candace furrowed her brows and said frankly, I've told you everything I know about Yawach, which means I've fulfilled our agreement. So I have to leave. Hearing this, Dustless chuckled and said teasingly, what if I say no? In this world where the strong prey on the weak, the words of those with bigger fists are imperial edicts. Just like Yawach, I'm ordering you to stop now. I have something I need you to do. Dustless said mercilessly. Because his fists were bigger and he was stronger, he could ignore Candace's feelings. Ordering me? I'm not your subordinate, so I won't keep you company. Candace's resolute tone left no room for negotiation. You don't seem to understand one thing. If I'm not wrong, you should be planning to leave Wanless Empire. But the only thing waiting for you is death. His words were far more effective than real swords and spears, and Candace stopped moving. What do you mean? She turned her head and glared at Dustless, clenching her fists. I killed Busby and you know his relationship with Jugram. They were close friends. Now that he's dead for no reason, Jugram won't let you off easily since you teamed up with Busby. Hearing this, Candace hesitated. She didn't doubt Dustless's words at all. As a member of Wanless Empire, she knew Jugram's personality the best. So what? Are you so kind as to let me hide in Soul Society? Candace felt frustrated after finding that there was no way out. That's impossible. Actually, you don't have to run away. You can continue to hide in Wanless Empire and provide me with information as well as your future plans. Dustless said seriously. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Candace fiercely attacked him. You Grim Reapers really aren't good people. You want me to go back to Wanless Empire? How are you going to explain Busby's death? You're sending me to the lion's den. She could go back to Wanless Empire, but she had to explain Busby's death and the details. That's simple. I've already thought about it for you. Just tell me the truth. Dustless said calmly. His tone was always calm as he added, just tell me the truth. Just say that I killed Busby and push all the blame to me. That way you can explain Busby's death. You can also stay safely in Wandless Empire without being suspected. Aren't you afraid of Wandless Empire's revenge? Jugram is now equivalent to a king. He can order all the Sterncross Knights to surround and attack you. Candace took a deep breath and said. She was somewhat impressed by Dustless's courage. Since I'm already here, I'll take it as it comes. What's there to be afraid of? Dustless said calmly. Chapter 985. As for revenge, Dustless wasn't afraid of it. Wandenrake was a rat in the dark, even more shady than Sosuke Aizen. Jugram wasn't stupid enough to use all of Wandenrake's power against Dustless. Okay, do as I said, I'll take care of everything. Dustless patted the dust off his butt and collected the dusty Yakushi and Rokush Kenshi's body. These two were the guarantee of his fame and fortune. Thank you. Candace's tone was much gentler, she was sincere. Dustless looked at her strangely and said seriously, You don't need to thank me. Just tell me the future movements of Wandenrake and all the secrets you know. This was a deal, there was no need to thank her. In the modern world, the captains were still fighting against Wandenrake, but it was obvious that both sides didn't use their full strength. After all, they were former teammates. But there was one exception. You bastard. Hirako Shinko was covered in blood, but his opponent Sosuke Aizen was unharmed. Although his face was pale and his Ryatsu was exhausted, Hirako Shinko knew that Aizen was faking it. In the face of so many captains, Wandenrake didn't bother to explain their grievances. After all, it was a fact that they obtained the power of voids. Silver. While the Shinigami captains were fighting, Aizen quietly approached Jin and gave him a strange look. Understood, Captain Aizen. Jin's lips curled into a sly smile as he secretly used his Ryatsu to the extreme. At the same time, he secretly prepared a portal to leave the modern world and return to Soul Society. What a pity, Captain Hirako. Aizen's Ryatsu was several times stronger, and he easily forced Hirako back. Then he suddenly changed his attack and rushed towards Rokush. Jin did the same. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The one fighting Rokush was a captain, and now that Sosuke Aizen and Jin attacked him, it was like three captains attacking him at the same time. Pucci. Pucci. Even though he had already noticed it, the team leader wasn't a newbie after all. It was impossible for him to be insta-killed without realizing it. Even so, Rokuro Toshiro was still heavily injured in an instant. It was Ikamaru Jin and Aizen Sosuke who stabbed the two Zanpakuto into his body and deliberately avoided the fatal spots. This unexpected scene shocked everyone. I will tear you to pieces, Sosuke Aizen. The members of the Masked Legion led by Hirako Shinko roared and glared at Aizen Sosuke and Soul Society's people with fiery eyes. Goodbye, Captain Hirako. Aizen smiled indifferently. Since hundreds of years ago he had never put this Hirako Shinko in his eyes. He was just a little bug that wasn't worth paying attention to. At the same time, Ikamaru Jin opened the crossing world gate and retreated while carrying the heavily injured and unconscious Rokuro Toshiro. Central Room 40's access mission has been completed. Everyone please retreat. Ikamaru Jin disappeared after leaving behind such a statement. The rest of the captains looked at each other with mixed feelings in their hearts. They looked at their former teammates who had now become enemies that they would not rest until they were dead. Especially after capturing Rokuro Toshiro alive, the hatred between the two sides will only get worse. Boom boom boom. Seeing this, the members of the Masked Legion opened their mouths and bombarded the crossing world gate. Several powerful void flashes swept out and shattered the crossing world gate. But it was too late. The team leaders of Soul Society had already disappeared. Although the battle between the modern world and the Masked Legion was beyond everyone's expectations, the mission was still completed successfully and they captured Rokuro Toshiro alive. After completing the mission of Central Room 46, Yamamoto didn't even have time to be happy. Instead, he almost fainted from anger when he heard the next news. It was a huge shock to the entire Soul Society. Captain Yakushi is dead? Tell me what's going on. The deafening roar of the head captain came from the first team. The shockwave caused by the roar shook the entire first team. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with murderous intent. Where's the murderer? Who's the murderer? This old man will kill him with his own hands to avenge Captain Yakushi. Looking at Dustless, the head captain asked coldly. Looking over, there were two corpses on the ground. One was Yakushi Kenpachi and the other was Rokuro Boxer Nishi. Who's the murderer? Of course it's me. Too bad you'll never know in this lifetime. Dustless laughed in his heart. The prepared speech appeared in his mind. He explained, the battle that day was very intense. Captain Yakushi Kenpachi used his absolute strength to severely injure Rokuro Boxer Nishi for the sake of Soul Society's peace. First praising Yakushi Kenpachi, Dustless revealed a sorrowful expression. Who would have thought that Rokuro Boxer Nishi would be so cunning? He deliberately pretended to be weak and lost to Captain Yakushi Kenpachi. In the end he went crazy and burned himself as a medium to activate Heido 90SX's cremation. That's how he took Captain Yakushi Kenpachi down with him. Dustless's words immediately resonated with all the captains, including Old Man Yamamoto, who nodded. He knew how terrifying and powerful cremation was, and it was obvious that both of them had been killed by number 90SX's Daobreaker. However, there were always people who liked to sing a different tune. Someone immediately jumped out to question Dustless. Looking up, this person was the Smiling Tiger, Sosuke Aizen. Chapter 986. It had to be said that Aizen's smile, his actions, and his simple words were all very convincing. He always gave people the impression that his thoughts were clear and logical. Vice Captain Dustless, you and Captain Yasukuni have some unexplainable grudges. Forgive me for being blunt, but it's a bit hasty to decide the death of two captains based on your words alone. Aizen's eyes reflected the light of wisdom as he spoke rationally. Hearing this, Dustless raised his eyebrows. He knew that Aizen would use this opportunity to make things difficult for him. It would be best if he could remove Dustless from his vice-captain position. Even if he couldn't, at least Aizen wouldn't be harmed. Dustless remained silent. He knew that Aizen had something else to say. Captain Aizen, what do you mean? Her gentle voice sounded. She was clearly angry as she spoke to Aizen in an unfriendly manner. Captain Unohana. Aizen Sosuke raised his eyebrows. He was quite unhappy and depressed. He looked at the expressionless Dustless from the corner of his eyes. He had tried to win over Unohana Retsu, but in the end he didn't succeed. Who would have thought that this kid would change so quickly? Captain Unoflower, there's no need to be angry. I'm just stating the facts. Roshi Kanishi was once a captain and so was Ghost Yen Cheng. If the deaths of the two captains are decided based on his words, how are we going to answer to Central 46? Aizen looked at Dustless with a smile, his face still as gentle as ever. Based on what you're saying, it's as if Irina-kun killed Yasukuni. Unohua Lai did not appreciate his kindness and continued to argue. The cause of their deaths was Daobreaker number 96. Qin-jun had only studied the path of ghost with me for half a year, so how could he have learned a Daobreaker at the level of Daobreaker number 96? That makes sense. All the captains nodded. They thought that Unohana's words were reasonable. A person who had only been a Shinigami for half a year couldn't have learned Heido 96. Dustless remained silent as if nothing had happened. He looked at Aizen. He knew that this kid had other tricks up his sleeve. Is that so? That's only for normal people. Don't forget that Vice Captain Dustless defeated Captain Yasukuni before learning Shinigami's techniques. Aizen smiled and calmly retorted. Also, I didn't insinuate that Vice Captain Dustless is a murderer, but... Aizen then stopped and said cunningly, since Vice Captain Dustless is innocent, why don't you remove the bandage on his right arm? Aizen's words drew the attention of the captains to Dustless, or rather to his right arm. It's indeed burnt. Shunsui Kyogre and the other veteran captains were bright and experienced. They immediately recognized that Dustless's right arm was burned. Since you want to prove your innocence, remove the bandage and let everyone see. Aizen's tone was different from before. It was more serious. Aizen pretended to be distressed. Vice Captain Yasukuni is a strict person, but he's also our colleague. Now that he's gone, Dustless looked at Aizen strangely. He couldn't help but feel strange. Captain Aizen, you're deliberately attacking me. Dustless wasn't easy to deal with. I'm just stating facts. Since you're innocent, remove the bandage on your arm. Aizen didn't back down. If you're innocent, I'm willing to elect you as the captain of the 11th Division. Aizen's tone was righteous. He was sure that he had seen Dustless's arm by chance. It was definitely caused by Heido 96. This old man. Dustless was silent. He did burn his arm when he used cremation, but because he had the body of the Jubi, he recovered quickly. However, there were still sequelae. Perhaps because he was in soul form, the recovery was slower than before. There were still scars. No wonder he's so confident. He's so meticulous. He didn't succeed because of luck. Dustless secretly used the glinting fruit's ability to repair his meridians. At the same time, his brain was working hard to stall for time. Captain Aizen is being unreasonable. I followed Vice Captain Yasukuni to Hueco Mundo and was ambushed by a void. Then remove the bandage to prove your innocence. Sosuke Aizen continued to repeat this sentence. Seeing this, Dustless suddenly smiled and said, "The world is really strange. If I remember correctly, Captain Aizen abandoned his chant and used Heido 91. I'm afraid not many captains can do that, but Captain Aizen did it effortlessly. I don't know why he deliberately hid his strength." "You're right. Captain Aizen, don't you want to explain?" Unohana Retsu realized something was wrong. Aizen had deliberately hidden his strength before. When he revealed his strength, it was only at the level of an ordinary captain. Now that he abandoned his chant and used Heido 91, it didn't make sense. Aizen Sosuke's old face twitched, almost spitting out blood. Over the years he deliberately hid his strength, of course, in order to plot against Soul Society. That day he used his full strength because he had no choice. After all, the situation was too dangerous. Soul Society's safety is getting worse. I've been training hard over the years. Captain East often practices with me. You can ask him about this. My strength has improved considerably. East deity immediately came out and nodded. Chapter 987. As Aizen Sosuke's most loyal lackey, East Sendai was always at Aizen Sosuke's beck and call. No matter what it was, as long as Aizen Sosuke ordered him to do it, he would do it. These two are really good at cooperating. Dustless knew that Aizen's explanation was a bit far-fetched, but with the captain as his witness he could rest easy. That's right. Sure enough, just as Dustless guessed, Yamamoto nodded gently. He appreciated Aizen's learning attitude. Learning was like sailing against the current. If you don't move forward, you'll fall behind. Only by forcing yourself to improve can you improve. Yamamoto often encouraged his first team members like this. Don't change the topic. Aizen took a deep breath and calmed down. Dustless hit him with a stick, so he naturally retaliated. The captain knows a lot about Heido 96. If you're innocent, just remove the bandage. Aizen didn't let go of Dust's wound. Even if I remove the bandage, it won't affect the wound. What's more, Unflower's captain is here. She can prove your innocence. If this has nothing to do with you, I'm willing to recommend you as the captain of the 11th Division. Aizen gritted his teeth and repeated. All the captains looked at Wuxia's burnt arm. The atmosphere was oppressive. I'm willing too. East Sendai followed. His tone was firm. He was sure that Dustless would win. These two bastards, one singing and one drinking, they really know how to play. Wuxian frowned, but then he sneered. Since Captain Aizen says so, I'll take off the bandage and show it to you. I'll leave everything to the head captain. Under everyone's surprise, Dustless removed the bandage. Chinkun, you don't have to care so much. Aizen is just being unreasonable. Unohana whispered to Dustless. I'm sorry for the trouble, but since Captain Aizen wants to see it, I'll let you see it clearly. After Wuxian finished speaking, he revealed the scorched black scars, which were particularly horrifying. His skin was completely necrotic and severely burned. Obviously, he had suffered an extremely serious fire injury. Seeing this, the captain looked at Dustless with uncertainty. The serious burn marks were definitely caused by number 90SX's Dao-breaking saber cremation. Clang clang clang. Vaguely, there was the sound of Zanpakuto being unsheathed. Looking up, many captains had their Zanpakuto out and were staring at Dustless with murderous intent. At the same time, they were shocked. This kid had only been exposed to the Shinigami for half a year, and he could use Heido 90SX's skill. The burn on Dustless' arm also attracted Unohua Lai's attention, and her eyes lit up. Cocoon Lee also looked at the burn marks and shook his head. How is it? Now you're speechless. Sosuke Aizen was feeling smug inside, but his expression was one of sadness. He smiled bitterly. Captain Yasushi is a strict person and he doesn't like to rub sand in his eyes. Usually he attracts the jealousy of many people. However, you actually dared to be so ruthless. How ruthless is your heart? Even if I let you go, Soul Society won't let you go. After Aizen said that, the whole place was filled with murderous intent. Some of the captains even pointed their zanpakuto at Dustless. Just as he was about to lose control and go completely berserk, an old and full of confidence roared out. "Shut up. Put away your zanpakuto, you idiots." Head Captain Yamamoto's squinted eyes suddenly widened, and an extremely powerful aura emanated from his body, causing everyone to feel dizzy and deaf. Although the burn marks are very similar to cremation, but that's not it. Head Captain Yamamoto tapped his crutch on the ground and looked at Wuxia. His old lips squirmed as he said, "Thank you for your trouble. In order to prove my innocence, this is not worth mentioning." Dustless smiled. Spiritual pressure came out of his finger. It was as sharp as a knife. He slid it on the burnt skin and some red blood flowed out. "This is impossible." After a long pause, Aizen was the first to refute. His pupils were dilated and full of shock. 96 Heido cremation is a sacrificial forbidden technique. Once it's used, it must burn the body. Yamamoto paused here. Unohana explained, "If Chinkun really uses Heido cremation, the whole arm will be dead. Even the wound won't bleed. Although the burnt skin is close to Heido cremation, it's caused by Hueco Mundo." "Captain Unohana, you're right." Dustless smiled and gave a thumbs up. "Captain Yamamoto is right. Heido cremation uses burning oneself as a medium. If the burnt part is the arm, then all the cells and tissues will be destroyed. It's impossible to bleed." Captain Aizen made a mistake this time. Maurinya also said, "You want to fight with me? You're asking to be humiliated." Dustless laughed in his heart. Aizen's twitching face made him feel good, but his face was full of grievances. Suddenly remembering Aizen's promise, Dustless quickly ran to him and bowed to thank him. "Thank you, Captain Aizen, for recommending me as the captain of the 11th Division. I'm very grateful." Aizen Suk's eyes darkened as he lost his balance. His face turned green as he stared at Dustless in front of him. If he could, he would have pulled out his sword and cut Dustless to pieces. He lifted the stone but didn't hit Wuxia. Instead, he hit himself until he saw stars. This kid did it on purpose. Aizen suddenly remembered Dustless's strange behavior a day ago. He was sure that Dustless was deliberately baiting him. Because a day ago, Dustless's arm was still in a necrotic state, but now it was only slightly damaged. He was obviously tricking Aizen. Chapter 988. Aizen Sosuke's heart was in turmoil. He felt extremely uncomfortable, but he couldn't say anything. He could only bury this resentment in his chest. "Captain Aizen, you were too reckless this time." Yamamoto rolled his eyes and said unhappily. Dustless was a vice captain. His strength was comparable to a captain-level Shinigami, maybe even stronger. Aizen was framing him without any evidence. "Serves you right." Dustless glanced at Aizen, whose expression returned to normal. He sneered. He brought this upon himself. "By the way, since Captain Aizen and Captain Toes both agree that Irina-kun should be the captain of the 11th Division." The one who spoke was Uno Hualai. After careful consideration, she said, "With Lord Chen's strength, it is indeed unsuitable for him to stay in the 4th Division." Indeed. Xianxia looked at Dustless. He couldn't deny that Dustless was the strongest among all the vice captains. "I also agree that he should be the captain of the 11th Division. Someone must inherit the title of Kenba, and Soul Society can't do without the 11th Division." Dustless looked at this scene calmly. He looked at Sosuke Aizen with pity. This was his plan, but it turned out to be the opposite of what he wanted. Unohana, Retsu, Xianxia, Aizen, and Toes, who lost the bet just now, could be promoted to the captain's position. There were now 4 vice captains, including Unohana, Retsu, Xianxia, and Aizen. Being promoted to the captain's position was a matter of course. "You want to be the captain? In your dreams." Aizen's eyes were filled with ruthlessness. He was determined not to let Dustless take the captain's position. The two were fighting, and Aizen was the one who suffered. Dustless was only a vice captain, yet he was so arrogant he didn't put him in his eyes. Once he became the captain of the 11th Division, he would become even more arrogant. Aizen raised his head and looked at Jin with a meaningful look. The voice of a sly old fox filled with ill intentions sounded. Ikamaru Jin stepped out of the formation with a smile on his face. "I don't agree with him becoming the captain." A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples, attracting everyone's attention. Ikamaru Jin wasn't afraid at all. He was as calm as a mountain as he said with certainty. What's the reason? The head captain nodded and said, I need a reasonable explanation, a reason why Dustless can't be the captain. This. Ikamaru Jin lowered his head. He didn't have an excuse. Aizen had instigated him to mess things up, so he didn't have enough time to prepare a proper excuse. He has only been in Soul Society for half a year. We need more time to observe him. Ikamaru Jin casually found a suitable excuse to fool old man Yamamoto. Dustless looked at Aizen, Higashi and Jin. He thought, these three are very close. I have to find a chance to kill one of them. Even if I can't kill one of them, I have to drag one of them down from the captain's position. He had to tear them apart. That's not a problem, even if it's only been half a year. Unkuan's contribution to Soul Society is well known, and his strength is recognized. Unohana Retsu smiled and helped. Captain Jin, what do you think should be done to be the captain? Glancing at Jin, Ikamaru Wuchin asked calmly. There was a hint of cunning in his words. Dustless wasn't going to let him off so easily. After all, he was just Aizen's lackey. Dustless had no intention of letting him off so easily. Dustless had no intention of letting him off. With a playful look on his face, Dustless asked with a pleasant countenance, Is it that if you defeat Captain Ikamaru Jin, you can be the captain of the 11th Division? Light Xiao's playful words were full of provocation. Dustless pointed the spearhead at Jin. No matter how arrogant you are, you should know when to stop. If I don't teach you a lesson, you'll think you're invincible. Hearing this, Jin's heart sank and his fox-like smile froze. A cold light condensed in Jin's eyes, and his heart couldn't help but burst into flames. A mere vice-captain dared to challenge him in front of so many people. Even with Ikamaru Jin's temperament of not liking to compete, sparks flew. Idiot, he's going to cripple you. Aizen looked at Jin and Dustless. He instantly understood Dustless's intention. Even though he said to stop, a duel was always changing. A moment of carelessness could result in a broken arm or leg. This kind of thing happened. Why don't we let Central Room 46 decide? Aizen stood up. Jin was very important to him. He could be considered his right arm. He couldn't afford to lose him. If Dustless destroyed him, it would be bad. King of Hueco Mundo, Baligan, had already died mysteriously. Aizen couldn't afford to lose Jin. The plan might have to be delayed for another few hundred years. The captain's choice has nothing to do with Central Room 46. It's completely up to the head captain. Unohana Retsu stood up and interrupted. In that case, Vice Captain Dustless will temporarily replace Oni Yenching and become the 11th Kenpachi. The head captain looked around and saw that all the captains were silent. This was equivalent to a tacit agreement, so he finally made a decision. In fact, head captain Yamamoto also hoped that Dustless would replace the original Ghost Yenching. That guy was rude and had no etiquette, like a living beast. He didn't have the demeanor and bearing of a captain, and usually Ghost Yenching was even at odds with Yamamoto. If he died, then so be it. Having a better replacement was the best of both worlds. Chapter 989. Aizen Susuke was unwilling, but he had no choice but to accept it. Dustless becoming the 11th Kenpachi was inevitable. Even if he used Kyoka Suijatsu to hypnotize Central Room 46, it would be useless. Yamamoto was the only one who had the authority to promote the captain. Other people's words were useless, they were just scratching Yamamoto's itch. It would be difficult to shake Yamamoto's will. Moreover, as Shunshui had said before, since Ghost Yencheng's 8th saber was dead, a new captain had to be chosen. The position of Soul Society's 8th saber had to be replaced by someone else. Man proposes, God disposes. Who would have thought that this brat would take advantage of me in the end? Aizen clenched his fists, his heart filled with grief and anger. Aizen didn't offend Dustless and even tried to rope him in. Who would have thought that Dustless would take the initiative to attack him? This was the reason why the two of them were now enemies. Aizen's eyes flashed coldly as he thought to himself, I need to find the right opportunity to kill him. This brat is strong and always against me. He hindered my plans time and time again. He's a scourge, a cancer. Several perfect plans were ruined by this eyesore. Not only that, sometimes Aizen didn't get any benefits and even got himself into trouble. He suffered a double loss. If you want to play, I'll play with you until the end. Let's see who dies first. Dustless sneered. Aizen's eyes were filled with bloodlust. What are you doing? Chinkun, why aren't you thanking the head captain? Hannah reminded Dustless when she saw him in a daze. Look at my memory. Thank you, Head Captain Yamamoto. I will do my best to protect Soul Society in the future. Dustless bowed to Head Captain Yamamoto to express his gratitude, but in his heart he didn't think much of it. After all, this old man just liked him because he was strong and loyal to Soul Society for the time being. He was a good coolie. However, what I want to protect is my own Soul Society, not some Spirit King's Soul Society, and I have no interest in being loyal to him. Wuxian added in his heart. People were selfish. Dustless wouldn't meddle in other people's business. Even if Yawatch killed Soul King in the future, Dustless would treat him coldly if he didn't get any benefits. Dustless didn't care about the collapse of Vientiane and the life and death of the people. He wasn't holy enough to rule the world. 10 days passed by in the blink of an eye. 10th Kenpachi, Ghost Yenqing. The news of his death swept through the entire Soul Society like a hurricane. This sudden explosive news made the entire Soul Society tremble. Kenpachi's death was no small matter. Kenpachi meant the strongest swordsman in Soul Society. Many people were secretly eyeing this title. Now that it fell into Dustless's hands, it was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples and attracted a lot of attention. And the person who started it all, Dustless, stayed in the 11th division as if nothing had happened. Everyone else has a Zanpakuto. Why didn't I react at all? Under the cherry blossom tree, the red cherry blossoms were floating and painting the whole world. Dustless, on the other hand, was frowning and looking very dispirited. He wasn't interested in this beautiful scenery at all, and his face was full of melancholy. At this moment, Dustless was also different from before. He was wearing the captain's haori, and there was a conspicuous 11th engraved on the back. Although he was now the captain, Dustless couldn't feel happy. A captain of death without a Zanpakuto, Dustless felt his face burning just thinking about it. In the history of Soul Society, he was probably the only one. Even Zaraki Kenpachi, that weirdo, had a Zanpakuto. Vice Captain Dustless, no, Captain Dustless. A beautiful figure suddenly flashed. A girl with silver hair was clearly visible. Her skin was white and her watery eyes blinked. The first impression she gave was light and beautiful. Zhu Yongyin. Sorry for borrowing you from the 4th division. I'm really sorry. Captain Uno Flower must be very distressed and depressed. Dustless scratched his head and said awkwardly, Captain, you must be joking. When I find a suitable vice captain, I will return to the 4th division. And if it weren't for you, I would still be in the 3rd division. Yongyin shook her head. She was now the vice captain of the 11th division. Dustless could only smile bitterly. The original vice captain of the 11th division was sent home to farm. That guy was stubborn and didn't like Dustless, so he could only ask him to leave. Those who follow me prosper, those who oppose me crawl. Why are you looking for me? Is there another blind bastard who wants to challenge me? Touching the 1st-generation ghost blade on his knees, Wu Chen's words were filled with murderous intent. Not long after he became the captain of the 11th division, someone came to slap his face. There was no limit to the number of challengers. It seems that I'm too merciful. Those who challenged me before, I let them live. So there are more and more people who dare to challenge me. If I don't kill a few people, they will really think that a monkey can touch a tiger's butt. Dustless said with a murderous tone. After he finished speaking, he walked toward the 11th division. Yongyin's face was strange. She felt that Dustless's metaphor was not appropriate. Looking at the gradually disappearing figure, he sighed silently and chased after him. Soul Society was such a place where the strong preyed on the weak. Killing a few more people would cause others to be fearful and mercifully let them go. Some people would think that this was showing weakness and would not know what was good for them and try to take advantage of it. Captain, I forgot to tell you. The man who challenged you this time is different. I heard that his name is Zaraki. Chapter 990. Zui. These 2 words seemed to be full of magical power, eroding Dustless's mind and silking his reason. His footsteps also stopped and he stood in place like a sculpture. A fierce man with a broad body and a serrated Zanpakuto in his hand immediately appeared in his mind. Captain knows Zaraki? Yongyin, who caught up with them, panted heavily. He looked at Wuxian, who was a little interested, and said, that man is unreliable. Especially his spiritual pressure, it's boundless. It's no different from the infinite sea. Yushin Hush's tone had a trace of fear. You mean Zaraki? I can barely be considered to know him. Dustless naturally knew a little about this character whose name reverberated like thunder. Hearing this, Kazuto Toru's face looked strange, and immediately remembered some similarities between Wuxian and Zaraki. She widened her eyes and asked, "Is it possible that the captain and him are relatives?" Dustless's head suddenly turned black and he shook his head resolutely. Who has such a bad relative? If there is, he would have been hacked to death long ago. Even so, Dustless couldn't help but ask curiously, "Why do you think so? I should be different from that stupid big guy." Yushin Hush's white and tender jade finger touched her chin, and immediately said seriously, "Captain and Zaraki are both monsters who like to release Ryatsu, at least this is very similar." Dustless opened his mouth and wanted to complain, but he was speechless. This seems to be the truth. In short, no matter what that bastard named Zaraki dares to come here, if I don't let him see some blood, I, as the 11th Kenpachi, will be too incompetent. A kind man would be ridden by others and a kind horse would be ridden by others. Previously, Wu Qin had let the challenger go out of kindness, but he was slandered as a rookie. He thought that this was a disguised sign of weakness. In this case, he can only let them bleed to clear their minds. Inside the 11th Division's building, the playground used for daily practice was surrounded by people. These were the members of the 11th Division, and without exception, they were all looking at the tall man in the center of the field with fear. This person had a fierce face, a scar on the left side of his face, his hair was bundled with a bell, and his right eye was covered with an eye patch. Not to mention challenging him, just his ferocious appearance was enough to scare the enemy to death. Sitting on his shoulder was a pink-haired, barefooted lowly. He is Zaraki. Really extraordinary, his aura seems to be more terrifying than the former Captain Onishi. That's right, maybe this Zaraki will be able to kill the new captain and become the current captain. Nonsense, I heard that the current captain once used overwhelming strength to severely injure Bailigan. So what? There are rumors that Zaraki is the disciple of the head captain, and he learned kendo from the head captain. Did you see his black eye patch? I heard that it was developed by the 12th Division to suppress Zaraki's terrifying Ryatsu because his Ryatsu is too strong. The members of the 11th Division talked with relish about the unlucky captain who might die as soon as they took office. Dustless. Get out of here. Useless trash, a group of traitors. Wu Qin, who had rushed over, happened to hear the discussion of this group of bastards. He immediately scolded them mercilessly and immediately released a huge spiritual pressure to disperse them. What a sharp and domineering look. At this moment, Dustless's body was cold, and he suddenly felt a cold and excited gaze locked on him. He leisurely looked back, and an arrogant and wide face with a long and narrow knife scar came into view. He saw Zaraki staring at Dustless with eyes that wanted to eat him. "Are you the new Kenpachi? Let's fight." After a burst of arrogant and excited laughter, it was followed by an unchanging opening sentence. Although it was boring, it also showed that Zaraki was a person who loved to fight. The 11th Division now had such a person. "You have a bright future, I admire you." Dustless glanced at Zaraki. He suddenly felt that this rough, straightforward, brainless and naive person was very pleasing to the eye. He was the opposite of Aizen, who was a scheming bitch. "You have strong Ryatsu, outstanding strength and love to fight. How about this? Stay in the 11th Division and with your strength I can give you the position of vice captain." Dustless had a sly smile on his face as he tempted. Without a doubt, this kid was the most suitable to be a fighter. He was very simple and not scheming. Although the vice-captain of the 11th Division was Isshin Toru, he borrowed it from Dustless. Sooner or later he would have to return it to Unohana Retsu. Sounds like a good idea. Zaraki's murderous aura was restrained. He was a battle maniac, he loved to fight. The 11th Division was a combat division of Soul Society. The environment was suitable for him. But the vice-captain is not suitable. I want to be the real deal. Zaraki's murderous aura erupted again, and the shiny sawtooth Sanpakuto was emitting a chilling light. "Is that so? I just became the captain and you want to kick me out? Your courage is commendable." Seeing this, Dustless knew that it was useless to say more, and he immediately pulled out the first Hoshiger. "Instead of a boring duel, let's raise the stakes." Dustless thought for a while, stared at Zaraki and said, "If I win, you will be my vice-captain unconditionally." "What if I win?" Zaraki asked back. "You win? You think too much. Your chance of winning is 0. Chapter 991. Being ridiculed by Dustless like this, Zaraki's killing intent was even more intense. You have to be careful, the consequences of his anger will be serious. The pink-haired little loli jumped off Zaraki's shoulder and reminded Dustless in a friendly manner, and immediately left the field. Perhaps because she felt that it was too dangerous, she ran for hundreds of meters before stopping. If you don't come, I'll come first. As his voice fell, the ground trembled. Looking up, Zaraki raised his zanpakuto full of sawtooth and rushed over like a monster. His whole body released a high-density golden ryatsu. The air was extremely hot, and the ryatsu in the air burned strangely, turning into a sea of fire. The scene was particularly spectacular. You don't even know Xuanpa. Seeing this, Dustless chuckled, then shook his head. This guy's powerful ryatsu is really a waste, because Zaraki only knows how to cut people. He doesn't know other Shinigami's fighting skills. Not to mention Kido's lethality skills. This kid doesn't even know the most basic Xuanpa. Whoosh. The biting cold wind came head-on, and at the same time the sky darkened. Dustless was stunned. A wisp of sawtooth edge fell toward his head. Look, the unlucky captain is going to die. Our 11th division is really unlucky. The new captain just took office, and now we have to hold a funeral. I'm afraid the team fee is not enough. Idiot, it's not good for us if he dies. Look at Zaraki, he's a fighting maniac, a typical madman. After becoming the captain, he will cut us like vegetables. This captain is still better. That's right, Zaraki is a complete battle maniac. The members of the 11th division who were hiding around whispered, comparing Dustless and Zaraki. They preferred the former. Just when everyone thought that Dustless's body was going to be separated, the sawtooth zanpakuto was stopped by someone. What, it looks scary, it turns out to be so fragile. A contemptuous and disdainful voice sounded out of thin air. Looking at the source, everyone was instantly petrified. How is this possible? You can actually catch my attack with one hand. Unbelievable, with a trembling voice, came out from Zaraki's throat. At this moment his face was lost and his rough old face was full of astonishment. Following his line of sight, he saw Dustless's left hand grabbing the zanpakuto with ease. Are too weak. It's impossible for you to hurt me with your current strength. Also, I won't be as merciful as the head captain. In order to deter some people with ulterior motives, I can only release your blood to wake them up, Zaraki. His cold eyes flashed with a touch of hostility. Then the first-generation ghost blade in his right arm vibrated. A ripple appeared in the void and everything that came into contact with this cold light instantly shattered. Zaraki was no exception. Pucci. On his chest, there was a long and narrow wound that was visible to the naked eye. Due to the depth of the wound, one could clearly see the glaring white bone. The piercing pain engulfed his entire body like a tide, spreading to his nerve endings. The pain was unbearable. Zaraki's expression was sluggish. He didn't expect himself to be so fragile. Just a face-to-face, he was instantly injured. Then this boundless disbelief turned into excitement and laughter. This feeling, it's really nostalgic. His eyes widened and countless dense blood vessels appeared in his white eye sockets. Zaraki's hostility skyrocketed, and his momentum also skyrocketed. Even his ryatsu increased several times and his eyes became more ferocious. Come, let's have a good fight. Make sure it's a good fight. Who is interested in playing this little game with you? Without waiting for Zaraki's voice to fall, Dustless mercilessly interrupted him. His face was indifferent, and the dazzling light gathered at the soles of his feet. He said, "This is not a fair fight, it's just a boring one-sided annihilation, that's all." Then Dustless jumped up and the light also blasted toward Zaraki's face. Lightspeed kick. Zaraki was shocked when he saw this, but after many years of fighting and with the training of the captain, he had already developed an extraordinary fighting heart. Whether it was consciousness, experience, or reaction speed, he was one of the top existences. He immediately picked up his zanpakuto to block his face. Boom. Even if he blocked the attack of the light, this powerful force was beyond his imagination, and Zaraki disappeared instantly. Kakaka. The wall 100 meters away collapsed and burst into pieces, and a tall man with wounds faintly burned and a strange smell was lying in it. He shouldn't die so easily. Although the slash and lightspeed kick were strong, they shouldn't have hurt his life. After a few seconds of silence, Zaraki was still lying on the ground motionless. Dustless whispered, He still needs this qualified fighter. Dustless still has other things to deal with after giving the mission of the 11th Division to Zaraki. Boom boom boom, after a few breaths of time, a vast and majestic Ryatsu suddenly descended, and the particles on the ground trembled, and the entire 11th Division also swayed as if there was a terrible earthquake. Even because the Ryatsu was too strong, everyone couldn't move an inch. Everyone was very depressed and breathing was 100 times more difficult than before. Undying cockroach, but this is also good, I can use you to test the skills I recently learned. Dustless was not surprised when he saw this, and a Ryatsu that was not inferior to Zaraki's also erupted. Chapter 992. The chakra of physical strength was raging and Dustless was not to be outdone. He desperately broke out without any cost. This surging Ryatsu is really enviable. Perceiving the content of Zaraki's Ryatsu, Dustless said enviously, this is still under the condition of wearing an eye mask and a lot of restraining Ryatsu props. How terrifying would it be if all of them were removed? Thinking of this, Dustless was filled with emotion. If Zaraki can also solve Shirkai Zanpakuto in the future or even Bankai, his strength will increase exponentially. A burst of arrogant laughter spread throughout Soul Society along with the influence of Ryatsu. That arrogant laughter made everyone frown. Although they were dissatisfied, they remained silent. This terrifying Ryatsu, it is undeniable that he indeed has the capital to look down on the heroes. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the raging storm came head-on, and the endless impact caused by Ryatsu shook the world. The dull sound was like thunder and Zaraki also moved with the momentum. Boom boom boom, his speed was extremely fast and his momentum was fierce. Zaraki's whole body was as heavy as a mountain, and the earth was trembling. The shocking scene left an unforgettable impression in the hearts of the onlookers. Regardless of victory or defeat, the name of Zaraki will be passed down in Soul Society in the future. Bakuto 63-6 Light Prison. 6 huge golden light belts came from all directions, binding Zaraki so that he couldn't move his body. His beast-like eyes suddenly dimmed a lot. It shouldn't be so easy to deal with him. Thinking of Zaraki's invincible Ryatsu, Dustless didn't hesitate to use other moves. Hato 63-6 Thunder Roar Cannon. A golden rainbow swept across the sky, leaving a straight ray of light in the cloudless sky, whistling straight toward Zaraki. Hey, I didn't expect this guy to be so strong. It seems that I have to go all out to resist him. Zaraki's face was a bit ugly and even horrified. With just a few simple moves, Dustless forced him to go all out to deal with it. Especially the number 63 Hato on his waist, it seemed to be much stronger than the others. Without hesitation he took off the blindfold and the amount of spiritual pressure increased again. What kind of monster is this kid? How can he have so much spiritual pressure? With his eyes wide open, Dustless was very surprised. He could clearly see the golden Ryatsu burning around Zaraki's body. It was extremely rough and powerful, like a golden flame, and everything that was affected by the Ryatsu would be turned into ashes. A skull completely formed by super strong Ryatsu covered Zaraki like a real entity. It was extremely hot and white steam rose from the air. The Rokuzen light prison that was binding Zaraki was dismembered in an instant, and the thunder roar cannon that was rushing towards him was burned to ashes before it could even touch him. It's really not simple. This kind of almost solid high-strength Ryatsu defense can even compete with number 96 Hato cremation. Its power is indeed not to be underestimated. Perceiving the strength of the Ryatsu defense, Dustless nodded in surprise. In the future, Zaraki would use this move to fight against the 8th generation sword Hakumaru. In fact, this kind of rough skill was very simple. It used a large amount of Ryatsu to form a defensive aura shield. Its function was similar to Kinsusanu, both of which were extremely energy-consuming skills. It could even be regarded as a mini Kinsusanu. That's it, you are the third person I have dealt with so far. Unlike before, Zaraki changed to a two-handed sword, and the whole momentum was obviously different. It was completely different from before. A burst of invincible sword intent locked on Dustless. This guy. Dustless was slightly stunned. He raised his arm and found that his skin began to ooze red blood. He looked up subconsciously and saw a huge sword light covering him. Are you kidding me? What kind of monster is this guy? Look, all the Ryatsu in the atmosphere is burning, and the 11th division has turned into a sea of fire. Run, idiot. The members of the 11th Division scrambled to escape. In a battle between monsters, they were just insignificant cannon fodder. They would be killed in seconds if they ran to the center of the battle. Around Dustless, not only the ground, but the sky turned fiery red and burned without warning, blocking Dustless's retreat. The places with Ryatsu were set on fire, and the momentum seemed to spread throughout the entire Soul Society. Farewell, former captain. As Zaraki's words fell, the Zanpakuto in his hand also fell, and the huge sword light stopped in the void also fell. Boom boom boom, the sharp and hot Ryatsu fell from the sky, and Dustless's whole body was swallowed without a trace, as if it was evaporated by the hot temperature, and the Ryatsu also disappeared. Ka ka ka. A ferocious and thick crack appeared on the ground that was hit by the heavy blow. The crack stretched for several kilometers and almost destroyed the entire 11th Division's building in seconds. Well, the Ryatsu disappeared, which means that guy is dead. Carrying the sawtooth Zanpakuto on his shoulder, Zaraki breathed a sigh of relief. When he was about to leave, his body suddenly felt a sharp pain. Puchi! A slender katana pierced through Zaraki's body, followed by a voice that wanted to cry but had no tears. Bastard, I really should have killed this idiot. The 11th Division is finished, how much money will it take to rebuild it? Zaraki ignored the severe pain all over his body, and suddenly turned his head as if he saw a ghost, and Dustless came into his sight. He was unharmed. Chapter 993. Zaraki's pupils dilated and his face showed a look of horror. For the first time in his life he showed an expression of seeing a ghost. Impossible! Zaraki roared loudly, and even because he was too surprised, his tone was full of sharpness, and he said to himself in disbelief, "Is this an illusion?" Puchi! The tingling pain from his chest made Zaraki's face twitch, and his whole body broke out in cold sweat uncontrollably. Ouch! Endless grief and indignation roared out from Zaraki's mouth, and the Ryatsu all over his body once again rose to a shocking level. Even because the golden Ryatsu was too dazzling, Dustless had to close his eyes. This guy is a living monster. Although I deliberately deviated from the heart, this kid should have been seriously injured after being cut, and he shouldn't be as lively as he is now. Although he closed his eyes, his observation hockey was still unfolded, and Zaraki's every move couldn't escape Dustless's eyes. How do you feel? If you mess around you will die. Looking at the bleeding Zaraki, Dustless pulled out the first-generation ghost blade, and looked at Zaraki with a pair of dull eyes and said, "It's useless to struggle." When this boring battle began, the actual outcome was already decided. Be my vice-captain. Dustless gloomily looked at the flat ground that was torn apart and swallowed by the long and narrow crack. His old face turned green and he immediately said angrily, "Stop, I don't want to kill you. It's not worth it to kill you. At least I can sell you to that pervert Mayuri for research, and maybe I can get some help to rebuild the 11th Division." Zaraki didn't seem to appreciate it, and the boundless Ryatsu in his body, not only did it not stop, but it was stimulated by the intact Dustless and desperately leaked out. Ah! A wild and bloodthirsty laughter jumped out of Zaraki's mouth, and his killing intent was endless. He once again raised his Zanpakuto, and his overbearing eyes were far more ferocious than a wild beast. The desperate beast will not obey, it will only become more and more fierce and bloodthirsty. Let's fight it out. Zaraki roared loudly. His vigorous and resolute tone spread throughout the entire Soul Society. He was covered in blood and his body was even pierced by Dustless. The bloody hole caused by Dustless's fist was clearly visible, but even so he still rushed over with full energy. Boom boom boom. The earth trembled and Zaraki didn't take a step forward, but the ground trembled with him. I should have told you before that this isn't a fair battle. In the end, this boring battle is just a one-sided annihilation. This is the last time I'll repeat it. Staring coldly at Zaraki, Dustless didn't hold back. This kid just needed to let him live. There was no need to be merciful. What's the captain doing? I don't know, but this Ryatsu is really terrifying. I thought that Zaraki was a monster, but it turns out that the captain is also a monster. He is not worse than Zaraki. Nonsense, he's the captain of our 11th Division, the 11th Sword 8 of Soul Society. It's only natural that he's strong. Hey, you shameless fence-sitters, you just said that the captain is no match for him, and now you're changing your mind. Despicable. In the distance, some of the stronger members of the 11th Division were discussing and despising each other, but they were all confused by Dustless's strange posture. Raising his right arm high, his thumb pointed to the depths of the sky, his whole body was particularly cold, and his indifferent eyes looked directly at Zaraki. Hado 90. A few simple words, but it contained magic. Above the ninth heaven, the white sky fell an evil blade. Dustless quietly looked at Zaraki, only to see that this kid was still foolishly rushing over, completely ignoring the strange black light in the sky. Untactful man. Shaking his head, Dustless finally said two indifferent words. Black coffin. As Dustless's voice fell, the falling black light became faster and sharper, and in the blink of an eye, it swallowed Zaraki whole. The Pucci? Unlike before, the black coffin obviously wasn't at full strength this time. There was no black coffin, only a few intersecting black light cut Zaraki. Puff. The cold light flashed, Zaraki's flesh was cut open, and finally he fell to the ground unwillingly. Although it didn't cut him into pieces, the kid's body was almost covered in blood, bruises all over. It was a horrible sight. So strong. Zaraki finally closed his eyes unwillingly. His breath was weak. If he ignored it, he would die without a doubt. You're too cruel, Chinkun. A beautiful figure descended from the sky. Her calm, elegant and gentle face fell into Dustless's eyes. He looked up and saw the captain's snow-white hair fluttering in the wind. Her expression was calm and tranquil. Her temperament of standing aloof from worldly affairs made people feel particularly serene. Captain Unohana, you're too serious. I've heard that this kid is tough. He's still breathing. Dustless chuckled, looking calm. His control of power was excellent except for his heart and some important organs. The rest of his body was damaged. Moreover, looking at Unohana Retsu's face, Dustless's lips curled up, revealing an unfathomable arc, and said seriously, if I didn't beat him half to death, Captain Unohana's superb medical skills wouldn't be revealed. Doesn't that mean that I should thank you? Hearing this, Unohana Retsu rolled her eyes and shook her head. After becoming the captain, Chinkun has become more talkative than before. Unohana Retsu's beautiful face bloomed with a gentle smile, like a ray of sunlight, warming one's heart. But Dustless's face was filled with disgust. He knew that Unohana Retsu had the attribute of being two-faced. Chapter 994. Sure enough, Unohua Lai's beautiful eyes narrowed into crescent moons. She stared at Wuchan with a smile on her face. Her lips curved into a light smile that was full of charm. She was bewitching but not flirtatious. Every frown and smile tugged at one's heart. But in Dustless's eyes, it was quite horrifying, giving him a gloomy feeling instead. Cough cough. Dustless awkwardly coughed and said seriously, Yon will return to the 4th Division tomorrow. I have to thank her for these past few days. I also have to thank Captain Unohana for accommodating me. As a new captain, there were naturally many things that needed to be dealt with. Dustless, who did not understand the role of a captain, had no choice but to ask Yon Toru to help him. As a result, he barely managed to survive until now. A captain was extremely busy. Not everyone could be as relaxed as Zaraki Kenpachi in the future, who could even sleep when he had nothing to do. Is it just a verbal thank you? Unohana Retsu said meaningfully. Her smile was even more cunning than Jin Ikamaru. Captain Unohana is referring to... Dustless's body trembled. To be honest, Unohana Retsu's smile was very uncomfortable. He felt extremely uncomfortable and had goosebumps all over his body. In Dustless's eyes, Unohana Retsu, who was right in front of him, was even more terrifying than Vasto Lord. Captain Unohana, if there's anything I can help with, just tell me. Dustless suppressed the strange feeling in his heart and said bluntly. He patted his chest and promised solemnly. In the half a year that he had been in Soul Society, Unohana Retsu had taken care of Dustless quite a bit. If she needed help, Dustless would definitely not reject her. Since you said so, I won't go easy on you when you need help. Unohana Retsu lightly smiled and nodded. Then, a blue halo suddenly appeared from her jade hands and began to heal Zaraki's wounds. Purposely avoiding the vital parts of his body was a piece of cake for her. What an unlucky year. The past few days have been really unlucky. Casually sitting on a rock, Dustless sighed as he looked around at the destroyed 11th Division. Even if he wanted to ask Yamamoto for money, he probably wouldn't be able to, so he could only brace himself and ask Unohana Retsu, I've been tight on money for the past few days, so if it's convenient for Captain Unohana, I wonder if you could lend me. At this point, Dustless fell silent, his old face turning green. Are you trying to borrow money, Qinjun? Hua Lai saw through Dustless's intentions. Her eyes glowed with surprise. After being seen through by Hana, Dustless felt extremely conflicted. It was truly difficult to borrow money from a woman, but in the end he could not deny it and nodded his head. Dustless's money was indeed tight, he could even be said to be penniless. At the same time he didn't forget to fiercely glare at Zaraki. Once this kid refused to be his hatchet man, Dustless would send Zaraki to Mayuri of the 12th Division. He believed that Mayuri would be very interested in this undying monster. He could exchange it for a large sum of money to repair the 11th Division. That's not a problem. Money is useless to me, and it's also useless to have a lot of money on hand. The 11th Division was destroyed by the two of you and it does need to be rebuilt. This was caused by a private fight. It's already a blessing that the head captain did not scold you, and it's even more impossible for him to give you the money to repair it. You'll have to think of a way yourself. Hana Lai spoke in an orderly manner. Things that were caused by oneself must be dealt with by oneself. This was the rule of Soul Society. Of course I know this. After all, I'm not as rich as Xiumu's family. I don't even have a single cent. Captain Hana definitely wouldn't want me to sleep on the streets. Dustless ridiculed helplessly. He did not forget to curse Zaraki in his heart. It was all because of this kid's recklessness that the 11th Division was completely destroyed. Dustless even had the thought of robbing Xiumu's family. A hero without money would be trapped to death. That's right. Suddenly remembering something, Dustless slapped his forehead. His eyes looked at the captain's haori that he was wearing and his headache disappeared. He suddenly felt enlightened. Could it be? Seeing Dustless's relieved and proud expression, Hana Lai vaguely understood what he was thinking. She did not know whether to laugh or cry as she said, "You're not planning to sell the captain's haori, are you?" "Why not?" Dustless glanced at the shocked Hana Lai and asked. He then went straight to the point and said, "Since the captain's haori is useless to me, why not sell it for some money?" Hana Lai's eyes darkened. She did not expect the usually intelligent Dustless to have such a strange side. She shook her head and denied, "This represents the captain's identity. Even if you want to sell something like the captain's haori, who would dare to buy it?" "Buying the captain's haori? No one in Soul Society would be that bold." "I can lend you the money, but I have a condition." Qinjun, hearing this, Dustless was stunned. He then said seriously, "Captain Hana Lai, just say what you want. You've helped me countless times in Soul Society. You're treating me like an outsider now." Oh. Qinjun is so straightforward. Seeing Dustless being so straightforward, Hana Lai nodded her head in satisfaction. She put down the work she was doing and moved closer to Dustless. Her watery eyes circled around him. Because they were so close they could even hear each other's breathing. "Captain Hana, you..." Dustless twisted his body uncomfortably. He could even smell the faint fragrance of Hana Lai's body. He could not help but choke. Just as he was about to ask, Hana Lai suddenly moved closer to Dustless's ear. Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's, but the content of her words shocked Dustless. "Did I hear wrong? Are you sure you want me to do that, Captain Hana?" After a while, Dustless looked at Hana Lai suspiciously. Chapter 995. Dustless's eyes widened and he couldn't even breathe properly. "Captain Hana. No, women can't be underestimated." What Hana Retsu just said was to ask Dustless to keep an eye on Sosuke Aizen. "I don't know why, but I feel like there's something wrong with Captain Aizen. Sometimes he's too calm in the face of certain things. It's like he knows everything. It's really hard to sleep and eat well." Her voice was filled with worry and caution. Hua Lai lowered her voice to a volume that only Wu Qin and herself could hear. Hearing this, Wu Qin smiled mysteriously and asked curiously, "Where is it exactly? If Captain Hana wants me to keep an eye on Aizen, you should at least point me in a direction." "This." Hua hesitated for a moment before smiling bitterly. "Qinjun, I'm not afraid of you laughing at me, but this feeling is completely baseless. Sometimes even I think it's an illusion. In reality it's just my intuition. To put it more simply, it's just my own guess." Dustless rolled his eyes. "People say that a woman's intuition is very accurate, and it seems like it's true. There's no need for Captain Unrestrained Flower to tell me I understand. Dustless readily agreed. This matter was nothing to him. Moreover, even if Dustless didn't pay attention to Aizen, Sosuke Aizen wouldn't let him go so easily. Maybe he was hiding in some unknown corner, observing Dustless's every move. In fact, it was just as Dustless guessed. Aizen was indeed paying attention to him right now. In the central 46 room, blood flowed like a river and there was a despairing silence. Because of the time, the blood on the ground had even solidified. In the basement of Central Room 46, there was a large, well-equipped laboratory. There were a few people working and the mysterious person was staring at the LCD screen. If we want to deal with Captain Unohana, based on the current situation, we have to count her in as well. Ikamaru Jin frowned deeply as he said seriously. What ability does that brat have? In less than half a year he managed to trick the captain of Uno Flower into joining his faction. Was our previous plan too stupid, or was the captain of the 11th Division too cunning? Dong Xianyao's face was ashen and his voice was extremely hoarse. Sosuke Aizen was expressionless as he quietly observed Dustless talking to Unohana through the LCD screen. A fierce light flashed in his eyes. Let him be captain for a few more days, we'll deal with him when we're ready. Aizen's success was mainly due to his ability to grasp the right timing and analyze the strength of both sides. Now was not the time to have a falling out with Dustless and Soul Society. At the very least he had to wait until he created the Hogyoku. Revenge was a dish best served cold, so there was no need to worry about temporary gains and losses. Hurry up and bring Hogyoku here. The Hogyoku must be made quickly. Time waits for no one. The recent developments are completely different from my previous plan. Aizen's eyes flashed with hesitation as he made up his mind. Recently he had been feeling uneasy but he couldn't explain it clearly. Everything is for this plan. This time we must be able to make the Hogyoku, break the boundary between Hollow and Shinigami, and step into the realm of gods with a mortal body. East Sensei was Aizen's most loyal dog and his face was full of enthusiasm. In the past he often failed. The biggest reason was that his soul was not enough. Now that he had captured a captain alive and integrated it into the creation of the Hogyoku, his soul power would increase exponentially. The captain's soul would be dozens of times stronger than an ordinary Shinigami. Time flew by and 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. In the first team's building the captains gathered, including Dustless. This was the first time he attended a captain's meeting. During this time, Saraki was persuaded by Dustless to join the 11th team and become a vice-captain. Whenever there was a grand void or a riot in Soul Society he would always be the first to come out. The head captain was quite happy about this. After all, Saraki was his disciple to some extent. Head captain. Everyone was silent. Dustless immediately stood up and pointed at Hueco Mundo. Last time, Silent Soul Society was attacked by Bailgang. We should immediately retaliate against Hueco Mundo. Aizen's old face twitched slightly and he tried to stop him. Bailgang has fallen in Soul Society. Without the existence of the king of Hueco Mundo, the entire Hueco Mundo will fall into chaos. All the Grand Voids will be fighting for the throne. We should just watch from the sidelines, there is no need to go to Hueco Mundo. How could he let Dustless have his way? Listening to his decisive tone, it was obvious that he wanted to kill all the Vasto Lord in Hueco Mundo. In the future, Aizen was counting on the Grand Voids to destroy the Shinigami. How could he let Dustless destroy them now? Yamamoto shook his head, he also thought it was impossible. This time he chose to stand on Aizen's side. Captain Aizen is right. Hueco Mundo has already fallen into chaos. There is no need for the Shinigami to interfere. Aizen followed the head captain's tone and said, and the number of voids and Shinigami must be balanced. If the ratio is too high, it will lead to the destruction of the entire world. Bullshit destruction. Dustless scolded in his heart. In the future all the Grand Voids died in the Battle of Kazucho, but the world didn't collapse. To put it bluntly, Aizen's words were to protect the Vasto Lord in Hueco Mundo. Chapter 996. Aizen looked like he was alone but he had a lot of influence. Hueco Mundo was his backyard, and Soul Society still had East Sensei and Jin. Not only that, East Sensei had a good relationship with Sujin, while Aizen had a good relationship with Yukitake Jushiro and Shunsui Kayakura. There were 13 captains in Soul Society's Gotei 13, and more than half of them were directly related to Aizen. Captains like Soi Fon and Kuchiki Byakuya rarely spoke, But Aizen was able to fool most captains with his good-natured face. Other than Aizen and Dustless, everyone else in the Goti 13 had a good relationship. Many vice-captains respected Aizen. Aizen has accumulated so many hidden pawns, I need to get rid of them first. Staring at East Sensei and Ikamaru Jin, Wuxian was thinking of a countermeasure. East Sensei wanted to get close to Aizen, but Ikamaru Jin was just pretending to be obedient. After thinking for a while, Dustless decided to deal with East Sensei first. Captain East Sensei. Looking at Zhou Xian with ill intentions, Wuxian asked pointedly, "A while ago, a few of my subordinates and my colleagues from the 9th Division went to drink. After getting drunk, I accidentally heard the members of the 9th Division say that 2 months ago, they had captured Phoenix Bridge Rokuro. He inexplicably disappeared." This casual sentence caught the attention of all captains and they all looked at East Sensei. "You're overthinking this." East Sensei was an extraordinary person to be able to climb to the position of captain. He said calmly, 10 days ago Central Room 46 ordered me to execute Kikohashi Rokujiro in secret. I didn't dare to publicize it because he controls Hollow and Shinigami. Central Room 46 was afraid of causing unnecessary trouble, so they ordered me to execute him in secret. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. After that, East Sensei bowed to the captains, blaming himself. I think you guys are the ones who used it for experiments. Dustless snorted coldly in his heart and chose to continue his attack. Dustless's eyes narrowed into crescents as he chuckled inwardly. Then he praised loudly, "The relationship between Captain Zhou Xian and the sages of Central Room 46 is so harmonious that it makes others jealous. Every time there was an accident or when the mission failed, they would stand up for you. We're all captains, so why is there such a huge gap between us?" These words caused all the captains to look at East Deity Yao. It wasn't just Higashi-sensei, but also Aizen Sosuke and Ikamaru Jin. Every time something happened to them, Central 46 would stand up and protect them. That's normal. Zhou Xian is observant and can do what others can't. Furthermore, Central Room 46 is made up of 46 sages. Naturally, they can see that Captain Zhou Xian is doing his best for Soul Society. It's normal for them to sympathize with him, said a tall man with an airtight head. This person was the captain of the 7th Division, Zhou Xian. That damned bear really isn't a good person. As soon as he saw East Sensei in danger, he immediately came to his rescue. Dustless sighed inwardly. Soul Society was in such a situation. The trio led by Aizen had connections throughout Soul Society. Whether it was the Central 46, the captains or the vice-captains, they all had a deep relationship with Aizen. Defeating him with schemes was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Once Aizen, Ikamaru Jin or East Sensei were attacked, someone would stand up and help them. Captain Dustless. Just as Dustless was planning how to trap Aizen, he spoke first, displeased. "You just took office and you're already suspecting the other captains. This doesn't seem right." "That's right. We're all captains so we can trust each other." Yukitake Jushuru had a good personal relationship with Aizen, so he stood up to help. Shunsui lowered his hat. Although he didn't speak, everyone knew about his relationship with Yukitake. Only a pedantic person would question the orders of the Central 46. The 11th Division is indeed a bunch of beasts. Keiki Byakuya opened his eyes and said coldly. Without exception, everyone's spearhead was directed at Dustless. Could be said to have aroused public anger all at once. That's enough. Captain Dustless is right. The Central 46 dared to hide this from me. After a while I'll go and punish them. Yamamoto's face was filled with dissatisfaction. He waved his hand. I'm not feeling well today. The meeting ends here. Please go back. Inside the 4th Division's building. Chinkuen, you know that Aizen has a lot of connections. Why did you deliberately confront him? Unohana Retsu wrinkled her nose, dissatisfied with Dustless's risky actions today. Because of Aizen, you've angered all the captains. It's not worth it. Not worth it? Not necessarily. Dustless drank the tea in his mouth and smiled mysteriously. Unohana forgot about someone. He helped me today. Unohana Retsu didn't remember who helped Dustless. Almost everyone was criticizing Dustless. Even Keiki Byakuya, who rarely spoke, jumped out. You mean, the head captain? Unohana Retsu was shocked. The head captain was the only one who spoke for Dustless today. It's him. Dustless didn't deny it and sneered. The head captain is in charge of the Goti 13. Today more than half of the captains spoke for Aizen. Even his two students, Shunsui and Jushu Yukitake, are on the same side as Aizen. What will the head captain think? Aizen should have been the head captain, but now it was Sosuke Aizen. One could imagine how the head captain felt. He would definitely hold a grudge against Aizen in the future. If Aizen can win over the captains, we can do the same. He'll definitely stand on our side in the future. He might even try to suppress Aizen. Dustless smiled. Chapter 997. If Aizen can win over the captains, we can do the same to the head captain. In the future he will definitely stand on our side and even try to suppress Aizen. Dustless smiled evilly. Unohana Lai nodded. On the surface, it seemed like Aizen had won, but in reality the head captain was wary of him. More than half of the captains in Soul Society supported Aizen. How could the head captain have any face left? You're really treacherous. Unohana Lai sighed and touched her forehead. She suddenly felt a headache. Of course she was worried about Aizen. Treacherous? Dustless rolled his eyes and looked at Unohana Lai. He didn't think he went too far. There can't be two suns in the sky and there can't be two rulers. Not only was Aizen Sosuke targeted, but there was also Yawatch. Dustless wouldn't let him off easily. Dustless would only be at ease if they were dead. That so-called Hogyoku should be completed soon. Thinking of the Ryatsu that disappeared, Dustless smirked. He let Aizen be proud for a while today, but it wasn't without a price. In exchange, the Hogyoku will belong to Dustless in the future. Jinkun, what are you smiling about? You're so cunning. Unknowingly, Unohua heard Dustless's sinister laughter and his dark expression. Immediately she felt uneasy. I'm thinking about how to deal with Aizen. Dustless felt a chill. To be honest, he was very wary of Unohana Lai, a woman with sharp intuition and quick thinking. Smart women were sometimes very likable, but sometimes they were also very annoying. Wanless Empire was surrounded by ice mountains. The environment was cold and gloomy. He's dead. The temperature was extremely low. Inside the palace, which should have been a forbidden zone for living creatures, a human voice rang out. What's the name of the Grim Reaper captain who killed Busby? Which team is he from? Also tell me the details of your battle. The person who asked the question had exquisite facial features, a cold expression and a noble bearing. It was the commander of the Sterncross Knights, Jugram. While Yawatch was in hibernation, Jugram had been given the mask of the ruler. All matters of the Wanless Empire were under Jugram's control. His words carried enormous weight and no one dared to go against his will. Those who knew Jugram would know that he rarely got angry, but at this moment, Candace heard a rare hint of anger from him. Of course there was also a strong killing intent. That death god captain. How did he know about these secrets? Strange, could it be that there are other spies in the Wanless Empire besides me? Candace asked herself honestly. Only a few people in Wanless Empire knew about the relationship between Basby and Jugram. The two had known each other for almost 1,000 years and could be considered close friends. Now that Jugram was angry, it was reasonable. The person who killed Basby that day wasn't the captain of the Grim Reapers. He seemed to be the vice-captain of the 4th Division, but his strength was beyond imagination. He was much more terrifying than the usual captain-level Grim Reapers. Candace explained according to Dustless instructions. Hearing this, a hint of surprise appeared on Jugram's expressionless face. He glanced at Candace coldly and waved his right hand, which was thinner than a woman's, indicating that Candace could leave. Do we need to get rid of him immediately? Candace turned around and asked as she turned to leave. There's no need. Basby will never die, never. Jugram's answer was very light, but it was filled with confidence and certainty. Basby was very important. He was a rare fighting force and Wanless Empire couldn't do without him. When His Majesty wakes up in the future, he will definitely have the ability to revive him. For normal people, this is as difficult as ascending to the heavens, but for His Majesty it's a piece of cake. As Yawatch's confidant, Jugram naturally understood his abilities. I'll take my leave. Candace's expression froze when she heard this. She clenched her fist without leaving a trace, but she still chose to leave. Jugram's strength was second only to Yawatch in the Wanless Empire. Blindly challenging him would only bring about their own destruction. They were not in the same dimension. Inside the Soul Society, Dustless also returned from the 4th Division to the 11th Division. Because it was a combat division, Most of the 11th Division's missions were combat. Therefore, Dustless threw all the responsibilities to Zaraki. After all, he liked to kill. Boom boom boom. Dustless, who had just fallen asleep, was awakened by a strange spiritual pressure. His eyes instantly widened. The spiritual pressure. It's not as cold and noble as the Grim Reaper's, nor is it as bloodthirsty as the Void's spiritual pressure. Sensing the difference in the spiritual pressure, Dustless muttered. He looked at the sky in the distance and was shocked to find that the spiritual pressure was surging from East Deity Fortress's 9th Division. Giving me a pillow when I'm sleepy. The heavens didn't abandon me. Dustless sneered and disappeared in a single stride. He had always disliked East Deity Fortress's blind man, who often jumped out to fight him. He was an eyesore and now he might be able to use this opportunity to teach him a lesson. Even if he couldn't kill him, he would at least kick him out of his position as captain. Your suitable target has appeared. There's work to do, Zaraki. Dustless appeared in the 11th Division and said to the excited Zaraki. He was a simple-minded person, so it was easy to trick him. Chapter 998. The reason why the captain was called the captain was because he was different from ordinary people in all aspects. The mysterious Ryatsu had attracted the attention of the entire Soul Society. All the captains realized that something was wrong. They released their Ryatsu and rushed towards the 9th Division like cannonballs. Hee hee, Dustless's sinister laughter came from the horizon. He already vaguely guessed what this special spiritual pressure fluctuation was. Hogyoku. Damn you, Aizen. Do you really think you can just let this go? In your dreams, the medium in Rokuro's soul has finally awakened. Thinking of the importance of the Hogyoku, Wuchan's pace was faster. He turned his head and looked down at the blockhead behind him. He rolled up a storm and suddenly scolded in a bad mood. Hurry up, Zaraki. This guy doesn't even know the most basic Shuanpa. Bastard, what's going on? Why is this happening? Give me an explanation. In the dark laboratory, Aizen's face was livid. He looked at the ball in his hand in disbelief. A large amount of Ryatsu was leaking out of it. I don't understand this either, Aizen-sama. East Senpai was bitter. He didn't know why the moment the Hogyoku was made, the Ryatsu inside began to riot and swept across Soul Society. The explosion of Ryatsu was one thing, but Rokuro's Ryatsu was also in it. This was bad. Before, East Senpai had to report Rokuro's death to the head captain. Now that his Ryatsu was in such a mysterious ball, he couldn't explain it even if he had 100 mouths. Bastard, what did I do wrong? Aizen was shocked. He felt a chill run down his spine as cold sweat dripped down his back. He could feel several spiritual presences sweeping towards him. The fastest ones were Dustless and Zaraki. They rushed over like lightning. There was no reasonable explanation for the sudden change in the situation. Sosuke Aizen's plan was about to fail. Boom boom boom. The golden light covered the sky. The Hogyoku's Ryatsu erupted even more. Aizen tried to suppress it with his own Ryatsu, but he couldn't do it. Aizen stared at the Hogyoku's Ryatsu. That's not right. This golden light is somewhat familiar. Aizen said after observing for a few seconds. When he first came to Soul Society, Dustless used a similar golden light to defeat Yen Cheng's Sword 8. Could it be the captain of the 11th Division? As his thoughts sank, Aizen's murderous intent surged. His entire being was filled with fatal danger. I don't think so. If he knew that we were developing something like Hogyoku, I'm afraid that he would have already reported it to the head captain. Ikamaru Jin interrupted. Aizen's eyes flickered as he stared at Dong Xianyao. Dong Xianyao's heart skipped a beat. Dong Xianyao felt a chill down his spine. He quickly got down on one knee and said, I am absolutely loyal to Aizen-sama. The Hogyoku riot had nothing to do with me. I am innocent. Aizen didn't deny it. He knew that East Sage was loyal to him. Get up, Yao. You have worked with me for many years. I can feel that your heart has never changed. Aizen continued helplessly, but this time someone needs to take the blame. This is the 9th Division. In short, you can't stay by my side anymore. Escape to Hueco Mundo. Baligan has fallen. Someone must take the position of King of Hueco Mundo. You will manage Hueco Mundo for me in the future. Dong Xianyao wasn't an idiot. He understood that Aizen wanted to sacrifice him. He would take all the blame. Yao, I know you feel wronged and unwilling, but don't forget your righteousness. Temporarily hibernating is for the sake of a better future. Aizen patiently persuaded Dong Xianyao. Then, under Ikamaru Jin's surprised gaze, he unsheathed Kyoka Suijutsu. Puchi! Dong Xianyao's chest burst open. Aizen stuffed the half-finished Hogyoku into Dong Xianyao's chest. I'll give you the Hogyu for the time being. Betray Soul Society immediately and fight with the captains to test their strength. Of course, if the situation permits, you can kill the captain of the 11th Division, Wu Chen. Understood, Aizen-sama. Dong Xianyao was so grateful that he almost cried. He looked at the Hogyoku in his chest. This was the best proof of Aizen's trust in him. If Dustless was here, he would have scoffed. This was only a half-finished Hogyoku. Aizen wouldn't care about it. Apart from that, Dong Xianyao couldn't tame the Hogyoku. If Dong Xianyao could use the Hogyoku to kill Dustless, it would be best. Even if he couldn't, Dong Xianyao could escape to Hueco Mundo and help Aizen manage the chaotic Hueco Mundo. At the same time, he could gain Dong Xianyao's trust and continue working for him. Killing several birds with one stone. Aizen would certainly do this. In the end, the Hogyoku would still belong to him. He was just lending it to Dong Xianyao. Boom boom boom. A berserk spiritual pressure spread out like a tide, covering the entirety of Quiet Soul Society. Compared to before, this violent spiritual pressure seemed to have taken stimulants, increasing by dozens of times. Dustless looked up and saw a black light rushing towards him. It was extremely fast, 5,000 meters, 3,000 meters. 100 meters, the distance was rapidly shortened. In the end, it was completely exposed to Dustless. Dong Xianyao, you came just in time. Dustless's eyes were cold. He fearlessly raised his sword to meet the attack.